Chapter 1469. Galaxy Calendar Year 800, January 1st. Central Galaxy, Planet New Era. A few months ago, in order to hold this celebration, the three universal civilizations had started to artificially modify this planet. They had transformed a dead and desolate planet into a celebration planet and named it Planet New Era to commemorate the past 100 years of experience, especially the victory of the World Tree War. Looking down from space, there was a gigantic building that looked like a heavenly tower standing on the ground of Planet New Era. At the top was an open-air square platform. This was the venue of the celebration, and rows of floating seats were neatly suspended around it. Countless spaceships were floating in the sky, covering the sky. Countless galactic media had arrived early. This time, it was also a comprehensive broadcast to the various star fields. However, the number of viewers could not set a new record because the war had caused a lot of population losses. However, the viewership ratings had reached a new high, and almost every family stayed in front of the television to watch the broadcast. Anti-gravity, hovering vehicles in the atmosphere rose from the ground and flew to the venue. The invited guests took their seats one after another. The representatives of the various civilizations, military heroes, beyond grade as, and so on were basically all big shots in the galactic society. As the guests took their seats and waited for the celebration to begin, the venue quickly became lively. The beyond grade, as beside him, chatted casually. Han Xiao did not participate in the conversation. He casually took out his communicator and took a look. The galactic media had already started to broadcast. The camera swept across the venue, and, as if they knew what the audience wanted to see, they pulled it to his face from time to time, showing his well-defined masculine face. "Tisk, you're always filming me. Do you like to be pleasing to the eyes so much?" Han Xiao smacked his lips, not embarrassed at all. Kasuyi, who was sitting at the side, elbowed him in the waist and chuckled. "It's a pity that you haven't revived those beyond grade as who died in battle. They're going to miss this celebration. I did it on purpose. When we mourn the dead later, if we see them alive, it will ruin the atmosphere." Han Xiao paused for a moment, and his expression suddenly became strange. "Besides, you don't want to see Dylan speak on such an occasion, right?" "That's true." Kasuyi shivered. Han Xiao shook his head and did not say anything else. In the past half a year, the Super's holy land had stabilized, and he had also had a rare relaxing holiday. His mental state was now very good, and he ate well. Although this celebration was just a process for Han Xiao, it was very meaningful to the galactic society. It was an attempt to comfort the wounds left behind by the galactic residents in the war and make them have the courage to look forward to the future. After all, normal people needed a sense of ceremony. Not long after, the leaders of the three universal civilizations arrived in person. The venue gradually quieted down, and the audience watching the broadcast held their breaths. Under everyone's gazes, Mar Bruce slowly walked to the podium. With a solemn expression, he swept his gaze across the crowd and slowly spoke. "The universe is vast and boundless. Countless unknown civilizations are like stars in the sky, bringing vitality to this world that should have been dead. We are one of them, living in a corner of the universe, constantly reproducing. In the past 100 years, we have experienced many hardships, from internal conflicts, technological disasters, invasions from foreign enemies." Marbrew spoke for a while and recounted the various experiences of the past 100 years. The Crimson Tide, the development of the flickering world, the intelligent plague, the World Tree War, and so on. After combing through them, he recalled the bitterness and sweetness, awakening the memories of many people. The past 100 years could be said to have been turbulent. Black Star was a figure that could not be avoided. He had an extremely strong presence on the galactic stage, as if most of the major events in the galaxy had his shadow. The past 100 years were like the rise of Black Star. Many players who were watching the broadcast listened with relish. When they thought of the Black Star Corps video series created by Pork Bun, they could not help but feel honored. They felt a strong sense of immersion, as if they were there. No matter how great Black Star's achievements were, The image of Black Phantom from back then was still etched in the minds of many hardcore players. Black Phantom grew up step by step under their support and witnessing. It was like watching a child grow up. It was incomparably close. We've survived the past, and today, we've finally entered a new era of peace. This is inseparable from the contributions and sacrifices of our pioneers. They used their lives in exchange for a new and stable life for us. Marbruce's expression was solemn. He took out a speech and slowly read it. Galactic Alliance Army Number 31 Division, former Red Empire's Iron Flag Fleet, resisted the World Tree Civilization in the Interception Circle. A total of 8 million people all wiped out. Galactic Alliance Army Number 477 Division, former Radiant Federation's Glimmer Fleet, faced the World Tree Civilization's vanguard at the front line of the flickering world. A total of 2 million people. Only 403 people remain. Galactic Alliance Army. Marbruce's tone was solemn as he read out the shocking casualty statistics one after another. As the numbers of the sacrificed troops were listed one after another, the mood of the people present and the galactic residents in front of the screen also became solemn. Many people only knew that the casualties in this war were heavy, but they did not know the exact situation. Only now did they have a clear idea. Everyone mourned in silence for a few minutes before Marbruce continued to speak. The atmosphere was solemn as he conferred posthumous honors to the fallen soldiers. After all the sacrifices were made, it was time to reward the living war heroes. Only then did the atmosphere become relaxed and lively. The war heroes went up the stage one after another, and the heads of the 3 universal civilizations awarded them one after another. The military officers made up the majority, and all the beyond grade as received a share. Even the former direct descendants of the revivers who had joined the Super's Holy Land received different medals of honor. Even the Supercluster Alliance, which had always been able to watch the show, received different medals. The 3 universal civilizations expressed their sincerity. Today, they did not talk about factions, only merits, and treated everyone equally, except for Lagi. Lagi originally wanted to express himself freely, but when he felt Han Zhao's gaze on him, he obediently followed the script. This segment lasted for a long time, and finally, it was Han Zhao's turn to be the last one. Marbruce coughed and said in a clear voice, "In a World Tree War, Black Star made too many contributions and provided us with a lot of information. In the end, he almost turned the tide and turned the disadvantageous situation around, giving us a chance to end the war early. No one can replace his contributions. All the members of the Galaxy Civilization General Court have unanimously decided to award Black Star the Galaxy Medal." Clap, clap, clap. Everyone applauded. Now that Black Star's reputation in the Order faction was off the charts, almost everyone sincerely congratulated him. When dealing with the Intelligent Plague, Black Star had already obtained a Galaxy Medal, and now he had obtained a second one. The Galaxy Medal was the highest honor of the Galactic Society, and in principle, it would not be awarded a second time. However, Black Star was the only person who had obtained it twice, and he had already made history. However, no one was surprised. Black Star deserved such an honor. Other than the Galaxy Medal, no other award could match his contributions. Amidst the warm applause, Han Zhao stood up calmly and walked to the high platform. "Thank you for your contributions to the Galactic Society," Marbruce said sincerely. On the other hand, Lewis and the Ethereal Pope patted Han Zhao's arm to show their closeness. Han Zhao would not embarrass them on such an occasion. He nodded and took the Galaxy Medal from the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations, pinning it on his chest. According to the usual practice, the recipient had to give a speech. Han Zhao had already prepared a speech, which was all just for show. He was already very familiar with this. He walked to the podium skillfully and was about to speak according to the speech when he suddenly paused. Countless lights flashed in front of him, and countless galactic residents were looking at him from behind screen. The guests around him quietened down and craned their necks. The faces of different races had the same anticipation and hope. They held their breaths and waited for his long speech. Seeing this, Han Zhao was a little dazed. He looked down at the metal on his chest and subconsciously rubbed it with his fingers. He hesitated for a few seconds before giving up on his lengthy speech. He shook his head gently and said seriously, "I hope that there will be no more war in this world." The venue hesitated for a moment, waiting for Han Xiao to continue. However, Han Xiao nodded to everyone after he finished speaking. Seeing this, everyone present applauded for a long time. The process proceeded step by step. After Marbruce impassioned, looking forward to the future speech, the celebration ceremony finally ended successfully. The entire Galactic Society was jubilant. It was as if their souls had been baptized, and they were filled with new motivation for the future. A few days later, in the joint conference room of the three universal civilizations, the Star Alliance is still the same. According to the spies who were turned by Black Star, the upper echelons of the Star Alliance believe their intelligence and are very excited. However, we still have to be careful in case the Star Alliance sends out new spies. That way, we'll be exposed. That's right. Black Star has already informed them. He said that he's going to disappear for a period of time and go to the Sanctum to revive a batch of beyond grade as. During this period, we have to be careful. Don't let the Star Alliance see through our tricks. The three of them discussed softly. Black Star had gone to the Sanctum and could not guard the Super's holy land for the time being. However, the three of them had no other thoughts about him. Now, they were only worried that the Star Alliance would see through their plan because Black Star was not around. After resting for more than half a year, the army has recovered a little, but the loss of Supers is quite serious. There's no way we can compete with the Super's holy land. Sigh. However, Black Star just said a few days ago that he's willing to develop the Sanctum with us in the future. I don't know if he's lying. The three of them were confused. Now that Black Star had the upper hand and his position was stable, there was no need for him to share the information of the Sanctum with them. They did not know what Black Star was up to this time. Marbruce hesitated and said, "I don't think it's credible. The Sanctum Revival is Black Star's important trump card. How can he share it? If he really did that, he must have a bigger plan." Lewis shook his head. "Let's not talk about him for now. It's more important to deal with the Star Alliance. Although they've fallen for our trap now, we can't hide it forever. The longer we wait, the more likely they will become suspicious. When do you think it's better to make a move?" The ethereal Pope pondered. Now that the war weariness is high, the Galactic Society can't withstand another round of war. If we act rashly, the praise now might become criticism. I think it's best to wait at least 3 to 5 years before the Galactic Society stabilizes. Anyway, time is on our side, so there's no need to rush. Let's wait until we recover. The three of them discussed in low voices when to start a new war. Half a month later, in an uninhabited area of the Super's holy land, Han Xiao floated in the universe, and there was no one around him. He had already greeted the three universal civilizations and the Super's holy land. Today, he stepped into the Sanctum and began his plan to farm authority. In the internal space, the world tree moved slightly and transformed into a Sanctum key, which quickly burned. The next moment, a surging light bloomed from his palm and shot straight out, turning into the light door of the Sanctum in front of him and slowly rotating. "I hope this plan works." Han Xiao calmed himself down and flew in. His figure was gradually engulfed by the light. Chapter 1470. It was the familiar stream of light tunnel, and the familiar hazy feeling. After an unknown amount of time, Han Zhao's mind suddenly shook, and he regained consciousness. Han Zhao's vision suddenly opened up. As far as the eye could see, it was still the familiar scene of the first Sanctum. The white world was boundless, and countless gentle light clusters floated in it, storing the information-formed collections of iterations one after another. It's still the same blurry feeling, but it's a little lighter than last time. Han Xiao was not unfamiliar with this feeling. After all, he had been here many times and was already a regular. He looked down at the back of his hand. The Sanctum Authority mark was shining brightly, one level higher than last time. Let's revive those unlucky bastards first. Han Xiao did not delay and skillfully sacrificed the mediums of the various dead beyond grade as to activate the Sanctum revival function. Very soon, Rays of light appeared out of thin air and gathered from all directions, condensing into a sanctum revival mark that floated in front of Han Shao. Han Shao pointed with his finger, and the sanctum revival mark seemed to turn into liquid, flowing along his finger and freezing on the back of his hand, turning into a complicated tattoo. He probed with his mind and checked the targets of the revival, confirming that all the famous people on the Soul Comfort Monument were inside. After doing this, Han Shao exhaled softly, calmed down, summoned the sanctum's message board, and looked at it. The authority of the first sanctum had increased again, and more content appeared on the message board than last time. Han Shao compared it according to his memory, and when he saw the fifth last paragraph of the Celestial Star Alliance, he focused and read it carefully. The last 4 paragraphs were where most of the content was missing. He had read it twice before and only obtained 2 pieces of slightly valuable information. One was the information forms stripping plan mentioned in the 4th last paragraph, and the other was the last paragraph, which indicated the continuation of the previous iteration's plan and mentioned some kind of unknown device and control valve. This time, Han Shao found that some of the missing content in the last 4 messages had been filled in. Among them, there was some information that caught his attention in the 2nd and last paragraphs. The conversion plan failed, but the principle has been proven to be feasible. The reason for the failure is the lack of a key medium of truth, and the connection cannot be established. Next time, this will need to be perfected. In addition, the information materialization device has been completed and loaded into the template. There is a possibility that information will be mutated during the process of creating the information materialization device, and it will appear in the subsequent information materialization in an unknown form as a distorted form, the penultimate message. The current true form medium is not enough to complete the previous iteration's transformation plan. We need a deeper level of connection to build a stable bridge. We have decided to add a control valve for the information materialization device to reduce the processing cost of the information materialization device when it goes berserk. The last part of the message. Oh, this Han Zhao's eyes flashed. The penultimate message was the previous iteration mentioned in the penultimate message. From the current content, it could be seen that the latter had inherited the former's plan. The unknown device and control valve mentioned in the penultimate message have been unlocked at this time. They were the information materialization device created in the penultimate message. In addition, these 2 messages threw out a new concept, true form. Han Shao was secretly surprised. With his current level, there were very few things that he did not understand at the technological level. This was actually the first time he had seen this term. Han Shao tried to use the index function of his sanctum authority to search for this keyword, but the sanctum mark did not react. Generally speaking, only a precise search for a single iteration or civilization name could activate the index function. Looks like I'll have to continue grinding for authority and unlock the civilization name of these last 4 messages. Han Shao nodded to himself. The civilization name mentioned in the last 4 messages was still empty, and he did not have the authority to check it. After memorizing this information in his heart, Han Shao closed the message board and began to search for technical information in the first sanctum. Although he had not finished studying all the information in his hands and did not lack technology, since he was already here, after the sanctum authority increased, the upper limit of his memory capacity also increased. After a long time, Han Shao finally filled up the capacity this time and returned with a full load. He did not stay any longer and opened the sanctum passage to leave. After passing through the stream of light tunnel again, Han Zhao's body suddenly became light, and he returned to the main universe. The sanctum light door behind him disappeared. Han Shao opened his communicator and took a look. Only 30 days had passed. The time flow is getting closer and closer. Next time, it'll probably only take 20 days. Han Zhao's eyes lit up. The sanctum message board seemed to be universal, and it was the same for every sanctum. Therefore, he only needed to focus his firepower on one of the sanctums. If he focused on all the sanctums, it would take many years. Han Shao thought for a while, changed into the king, and teleported to the main planet of the Super's Holy Land. He flew to the huge square where all the beyond grade A statues were placed. At this time, the square was bustling with activity, and there was an endless stream of pedestrians. They were all supers who had gathered from all over the world. When they saw Han Shao arrive, they were stunned for a moment before being overjoyed. "Look, it's Black Star. It's actually a real person. I'm your admirer. Can you give me an autograph?" Many passers-by were excited. They swarmed over like crazy fans. Among the supers, Black Star was almost the idol of the entire world. At least 8 out of 10 supers were his admirers. He was no different from a great man. Han Shao smiled at the crowd and waved his hand. A gentle breeze blew, and an invisible force field rotated and spread out, covering an area like a transparent barrier, blocking all the pedestrians. The pedestrians further away also heard the wind and came over. There was a sea of people outside the barrier, and soon there were layers and layers of people. They looked at Han Shao curiously, guessing the purpose of his appearance. Han Shao did not explain anything and just activated the Sanctum revival mark. Rays of light surged and condensed into balls of light, gradually transforming into the bodies of the dead beyond grade as. The reason why he deliberately showed his divinity in front of the public was to let the public see the actual scene of the Sanctum revival and increase the attraction of the Super's Holy Land. This was the plan that had been decided during the meeting a few months ago. In the future, every Sanctum revival would be carried out publicly. Before farming the Sanctum authority, Han Shao planned to revive these unlucky people first. On one hand, he wanted them to return earlier and fulfill his promise. On the other hand, he wanted the 3 universal civilizations and the other organizations to see that the time he spent in the Sanctum had been shortened, telling them that he could return at any time. Although these people might not have any other thoughts, Han Shao felt that it was best to avoid this possibility, in case these advanced civilizations felt that he had disappeared for too long and wanted to cause trouble again. Very soon, the light in the square condensed, and under everyone's gazes, the dead beyond grade as were revived. Confusion remained on their faces, and they only gradually regained their senses after a while. "Ha, I'm alive again. Praise Black Star. Where is this? Why haven't I seen it before? What era is it now? Is the World Tree War over?" The group of revivers looked around curiously. In the end, their gazes landed on Han Shao. "All right, the war is over. We won. You can ask Aurora and the others about the details." Han Shao waved his hand nonchalantly. This was not the first time these people had revived, and the good thing was that he did not need to explain the situation from the beginning. He turned to look at Dylan and said, "I've fulfilled my promise and let you regain your freedom. You'd better keep a low profile in the future. Otherwise, if others want to kill you again, I won't stop them." Dylan's face twitched, and he was speechless. Regaining his freedom should have been a happy thing, but Dylan felt guilty. When he was an underworld hero spirit, he did not have to worry about anything, so he was even more unrestrained when he spoke. He could scold whoever he wanted, and he offended many people. Others could not be bothered to argue with a dead person like him, but now that he was alive, if others came to settle the score, even if they had to suffer, for some reason, Dylan felt a little reluctant to be an underworld hero spirit. Han Shao did not say much to the others. He turned around and teleported, disappearing from the spot. Without the force field barrier, countless pedestrians swarmed over. These revivers did not understand the situation and were almost drowned in the sea of people. They quickly rose into the sky and left. Halfway through the flight, Aurora, who had already noticed the commotion, rushed over with a group of beyond grade, as who had stayed behind on the main planet, to welcome the revivers. "Congratulations on your revival. Come with us, and I'll explain the situation to you," Aurora said. Ever since she was elected as the second-in-command of the Super's Holy Land, she had been maintaining her mature appearance, as if this would give her some dignity. However, in the eyes of the beyond grade, as who had a preconceived impression of her, she was still cute. Even if Aurora purposely put on a dignified and elegant posture, it did not have any deterrence at all. The revivers nodded and followed Aurora, flying toward the core building of the Super's Holy Land. Just as Dylan was about to follow, he suddenly felt a hot and vigorous blood aura coming from the side. Two thick and elastic chest muscles clamped over and bit his arm like a big mouth. At the same time, his shoulder was held by someone, and waves of force came from it, grabbing him tightly, not allowing him to move. Dylan turned around and saw Sierran appear beside him. He put his arm around his shoulder and put his arm around his shoulder. The huge basin came over, and there was a malicious smile on his rough face. "Yo, you're finally alive. Come over here. We have a bunch of guys who want to have a good chat with you." Dylan turned his head stiffly and saw a group of beyond grade as staring at him with playful eyes. There was no lack of peak beyond grade as among them. Gulp! Dylan swallowed his saliva, and cold sweat broke out on his back. As the saying went, it was easy to go from frugal to extravagant, but difficult to go from extravagant to frugal. At this moment, Dylan realized that it was indeed more comfortable to be a hero spirit. Han Shao only appeared for a short while. After completing the Sanctum revival, he immediately opened the Sanctum and started the operation to farm his authority. Now that the matters of the Super's Holy Land were under the jurisdiction of Aurora and the Elders Committee, and the external environment was very stable, his disappearance did not have much of an impact. As the days passed, it was finally time for Kasui to set off. Most of the Beyond Grade as respected this old brother of theirs, and on the day he left, they all came to send him off. After the Battle of the World Tree, most of them had become comrades, and their relationship was much better than before. Kasui, who was kind to others, was quite popular. At the dock of the Super's Holy Land, long-distance spaceships that contained all kinds of the highest technology were docked in orbit. The hatch opened, and Kasui and Oathkeeper had already packed their things. They stood in front of the gangway and said goodbye to everyone. The unexplored universe is filled with unknown dangers. You two must be careful, Aurora reminded on behalf of everyone. Kasui smiled. It's fine. Anyway, there's Black Star to back us up. Haha, just kidding. With our abilities, we won't fall into danger so easily. Once you guys leave, you probably won't be back for a long time. There's no news of you. Sigh, I won't be able to find you to play cards in the future. Kant was a little sad. It's fine. Our Super's Holy Land doesn't have much else, but we have plenty of poker friends. Kasui shook his head and smiled. At this moment, Manison walked forward and patted Kasui's shoulder. He did not say much and said concisely, "Goodbye, old friend. Have a safe journey." "Thank you. I wish you a smooth seclusion." Kasui stopped smiling and nodded. Excluding Black Star, among everyone, his relationship with Manison was actually the best. The two of them had known each other for hundreds of years and were old acquaintances. You know my background, and I know yours. Their relationship was not ordinary. Most of the people around Kasui were beyond grade as of the current era. On the other side, Oathkeeper was surrounded by the first batch of revived primordial ones of the Holy Covenant organization. Back then, when we made the Holy Covenant together, our companions died one after another. Only you persevered until now. We didn't expect you to really complete this cause. It's been hard on you all these years. If not for you, we would still be in hibernation. Although you didn't show off in the era when we were active, only now do we know that you might be the best among us. The primordial ones were filled with emotions. Oathkeeper waved his hand expressionlessly. Let's not talk about the past. I'm just carrying out the promise back then. There's nothing worth praising. Unfortunately, although we really achieved our wish and successfully revived in the future, the era no longer belongs to us. Biger sighed and said with a reluctant tone, "Sigh, no matter what, we're always grateful for what you did. When you miss us, take a look at the primordial card deck we gave you. This is the first generation limited edition card that we kindly got from the headquarters of the Wayne Card Distribution Group. I'll keep it well." Oathkeeper was speechless, but an imperceptible smile still appeared on his usually serious face. After bidding farewell for a while, they finally finished saying what they needed to say. Kasui and Oathkeeper looked at each other. "Let's go." The two of them nodded to everyone, turned around, and boarded the spaceship. Everyone watched as the spaceship slowly started, glided along the track, took off, and drove into space. It suddenly accelerated and disappeared into the depths of the galaxy, leaving behind a bright trail of flames. Manison retracted his gaze, turned around, and left without saying goodbye. He decided to enter a long-term seclusion from today onwards. He would be isolated from the world, learn technology down to earth, and focus on scientific research. Compared to taking shortcuts, he still preferred to rely on his own wisdom. It had never changed. At the same time, in the arcane church, temple of 10,000 gods, a fleet of long-distance voyages was ready to set off. Your Excellency Wernos, have you decided? Are you really going to the unexplored universe? A group of priests gathered around him with a complicated expression. I've already discovered that the key to opening the path ahead is hidden in the depths of the galaxy. Wernos looked at the galaxy with a deep gaze. Just a few months ago, he had finally unearthed his hidden perception and sensed the location of the Beyonder's vestige in the galaxy. It was like the morning star, guiding the way from afar. In the end, he decided to follow his intuition and leave the explored universe to head to the unknown area to find an opportunity to enter the transcendent grade. In that case, we respect your choice. The Pope asked us to specially pass on a message. He said that he hopes that when you return, you can become the first direct descendant transcendent. Tell him that he will get what he wants. Wernos replied calmly and walked into the spaceship. The next moment, the Arcane Church's fleet slowly set sail, heading toward the unknown path. P.S. Let me recommend my good friend July's new book. It's amazing. It's actually called New Book. July is an old history writer, and there's no need to doubt her skills. The background dynasty she chose this time is the era of Transmigrator, Wang Meng, and Grand Magus Lucio. It sounds quite interesting. If you're interested, catch me and take a look. Thank you for the 50,000 reward from Shun City Scholar. Thank you for the 12,000 reward from the people who don't eat gold coins. End of chapter. Chapter 1471. Super's Holy Land, a certain no man's land. A ball of colorful energy floated in space. Its shape was unpredictable, like a colorful cloud that was kneaded by an invisible force. All kinds of high-energy particles flowed through it like electric signals released by neurons. The entire energy ball was like a small, nebula-like energy field-type brain. Evans floated in the middle with a serious expression. He carefully controlled all kinds of energy and constantly perfected this nebula brain. However, all of a sudden, the energy nebula expanded unstable. The nerve bridges built by all kinds of energy collapsed in a chain reaction. Just as the energy nebula was about to expand and explode, Evans crossed his hands and opened his Esper field. The violent energy suddenly stabilized and quickly shrank, turning into a dazzling ball of light the size of a human head that was absorbed by Evans. Sigh, I failed again. Evans had a helpless expression as he sighed inwardly. Ever since he saw the battle of the transcendent grade in the war, he had deeply felt the inadequacy of his strength and had always yearned for that incredible power. Originally, after the war ended, everyone started to take a break, but Evans was one of the very few people who did not relax and had been focusing on developing his Esper ability. On one hand, his motivation was his own pursuit. On the other hand, Evans still remembered the high hopes that Black Star had for him and was not willing to waste his hard-earned potential. He wanted to reach the level that Black Star had expected. E.S. God, on the other hand, was very gratified by this. He thought that Evans had always remembered the promise to help him beat up Black Star and had always taught him everything he knew and guided Evans' cultivation. I hope I can improve as soon as possible. His Excellency Black Star told me that he hopes that I will be a pillar of the Super's Holy Land in the future. I can't disappoint him. Evans clenched his fists and encouraged himself. Just as he was about to try again, his perception suddenly moved and he looked in a direction. A stream of light approached from afar, and a spaceship jumped over and hovered not far away. A strong figure flew out. It was Carrot. So you're here. I was wondering when there was an additional high-energy reaction area in the territory. Carrot was surprised to see Evans and took the initiative to talk to him. Hello. Evans hesitated for a moment. He nodded and greeted him. Even though both of them were members of the Black Star Corps, they were not members of the Black Star Corps. However, they didn't interact much with each other and only knew each other's basic information. They were just acquaintances. "What are you doing here?" Evans was curious. "Am I looking for an extreme environment to temper my body?" The spaceship sensed a high-energy reaction, so I came over. "So it was you who was training." "No wonder." "Oh, so that's how it is." The two of them were not familiar with each other. He braced himself and chatted awkwardly for a while. When he realized that there was nothing to talk about, he gradually fell silent. But no one left. Staring at each other, the atmosphere slowly became strange. Speaking of which, when the two of them were cultivating in seclusion, they had always thought that they were the only seated contestants who had received special treatment from Black Star. It was only after they came out of seclusion that they were surprised to learn of Black Star's existence and realized that they were not the only one. Such a relationship, this caused the two of them to have very subtle thoughts about each other. On one hand, they were curious about each other's background. On the other hand, he was curious about what Black Star saw in her. This kind of mentality was roughly equivalent to two top students in a class. All of them had received special treatment from their teacher, so they subconsciously developed competitive instincts after a long time. Carrot coughed dryly, broke the silence. He tried to speak. "Why don't the two of us practice?" "Sound good." Evans and Carrot's eyes met in midair, and sparks seemed to fly. Black Star Corps headquarters, Fleet Commander's office. Haluz sat on the sofa with his legs crossed, looked at the few sunils in front of him, and pushed the wine glass on the table with his finger. "Drink a little?" "No need, Your Excellency, Haluz." Haluz did not mind. He sized up the leader of the sunils, nodded, and said, "You are the leader of the sunils. You must be this generation's sunil leader." "Not bad, not bad. The previous leader mentioned you to me before, saying that you are very smart and capable." "You flatter me." The leader nodded. The sunils were Haluz's race. Ever since the rise of the Black Star Corps, Haluz, as the earliest elder, had a lot of power, and he had provided a lot of resources to his race within his power. Therefore, every generation of sunil leaders would come to visit him, and this generation was no exception. "Since you become the leader, then do your best." Haluz encouraged. He then looked at the few young sunils behind him, raised his brows, and said, "Don't worry. These are, Your Excellency Haluz, these are a few young people with potential in my immediate family. They wish to enter the Black Star Corps to train. Please take care of them." The sunil leader said respectfully. Haluz sized them up. The youths immediately puffed out their chests and raised their heads nervously. Seeing this, Haluz shook his head and said, "The army has a new leader. Nero is in charge now, but the standards are still as strict as before. I can make them official members, but whether they can climb up the ranks will depend on their own abilities." "Thank you, Your Excellency." The sunil leader bowed. Haluz waved his hand, indicating that there was no need for formalities. After a pause, he suddenly changed the topic. "From today onwards, don't come to visit me anymore. It's time for you to be more independent. Leave now." The sunil leader's body trembled slightly. His expression was complicated, but he did not say anything. He lowered his head and left with his people. After the group left, another person walked in. It was Sylvia. She had been eavesdropping outside for quite some time. "Not bad. You finally decided not to use your position for personal gain," Sylvia teased. "Nonsense. I've always been thinking for the army." Haluz rolled his eyes. "I'm just joking, but I'm curious. Why aren't you helping the race anymore?" Sylvia blinked. "They can't always rely on me, or they'll become dependent on me sooner or later. After almost 100 years, the habits cultivated by generations have already shown signs of this. I can't just turn a blind eye to it." Haluz shook his head and said with a deep voice, "Plus, Black Star used to tolerate me, but now that there's someone else in power, I can't be insensible in the future." Sylvia curled her lips and did not say anything. She stood in front of the window with her hands behind her back and looked at the bright galaxy outside. Suddenly, she sighed and said, "In the blink of an eye, it's been 100 years." Haluz also turned to look outside the window and sighed. "Yes, it's been 100 years. We actually follow Black Star to where we are today. Sometimes, thinking about it, it really feels like a dream. If Black Star didn't invite me back then, I might have spent the rest of my life in my own little tavern. If I didn't meet him, Sylvia paused, shook her head, and said, maybe I would have died in some corner of the universe long ago. The life we're living now is not something we could have dreamed of in the past. The two of them looked outside the window, quietly, and did not say anything else, silently savoring their memories. In the peaceful times, time passed even more quietly. In the blink of an eye, another few months had passed. On this day, in the joint conference room of the three universal civilizations. Recently, the hearts of the direct beyond grade as have been wavering. The expansion of the Super's holy land is too shocking. Fortunately, Claudi, Ulu, and the others have stabilized the situation. Otherwise, there would be another direct descendant who would join the Super's holy land. The leaders of the three universal civilizations sighed bitterly. The Super's holy land had broken the old pattern. As the original beneficiaries, they naturally could not feel comfortable, but they could only silently endure the waves of impact. Speaking of which, Black Star hasn't appeared recently. Didn't he already complete the Sanctum Revival? What has he been busy with recently? The ethereal Pope was curious. Who knows? I can't get any information anyway. Mar Bruce was helpless. It's not a good idea for him to disappear for so long. If the Star Alliance sends new spies and Black Star happens to not be around, I'm afraid we'll be exposed. Speaking of which, if Black Star is willing to help, as long as he controls the leaders of the Star Alliance, we can win very easily. Unfortunately, he doesn't want to help. With Black Star's personality, there's nothing absolute. I think the price is not enough. As long as we offer some conditions, he should still agree. Makes sense, but his appetite is very big now. We have to think about what chips we can use to move him. Just as the three of them were discussing how to pull Han Xiao to invade the Star Alliance, a remote projection suddenly appeared in the room. It was Han Xiao. The three of them were shocked. Black Star? You're back. Why didn't you inform us? Mar Bruce was halfway through his sentence when he came back to his senses. He frowned and said unhappily, Hey, you didn't hack the Dynasty's database again, did you? Han Xiao ignored Mar Bruce's dissatisfaction. Instead, he looked at the three of them with a strange gaze and slowly said, I came here to share the Sanctum. I'm here this time to share the Sanctum's information. Everyone can develop it together. If you're not willing, then I'll leave. The three of them were stunned. Are you serious? Are you really going to bring us along to develop the Sanctum? Lewis's tone was hesitant and filled with disbelief. He had thought that Black Star was joking. Han Xiao nodded, but he suddenly changed the topic and said in a meaningful tone, But before we work together, I have something to tell you. Don't be afraid of what I'm going to say next. Afraid? The ethereal Pope was a little amused and did not think much of it. We've even experienced an enemy, like the World Tree. What else can we be afraid of? Just say it. We've all been through a lot. You won't scare us. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows with a playful expression. Chapter 1472. All right, what I'm going to say next is the truth about the changes of the entire universe. It's more important than everything you've experienced in the past and now. Let me tell you in advance, if you have any meetings later, cancel them all. Han Xiao saw the disapproving expressions of the three of them and shook his head. His tone was unquestionable. The truth of the universe. Mar Bruce and the other two looked at each other. Seeing that Han Xiao did not seem to be joking, they could not help but be skeptical. Han Xiao snapped his fingers and summoned a virtual screen. On it was a virtual scene of the birth and death of the universe. He explained, when a universe comes to an end, everything will return to nothingness. Heat death, the Great Collapse, and other phenomena are the end of the universe that many scientists have guessed or foreseen. All kinds of signs and experiments show that these are very likely to be correct doomsday models, but this is only under normal circumstances. However, the direction of our universe doesn't follow the most primitive laws of nature. A long time ago, our universe was modified by an ultimate civilization. The underlying laws of the information form changed. On the day of the end of our universe, what awaits us is not heat death or collapse, but a phenomenon called the Great Reboot. The Great Reboot? The three of them were confused. It was not that the scientific research community did not have similar guesses, but it was not a mainstream theory, and there was no conclusive evidence to support it. Most of the evidence came from some unknown items produced by information form disturbances, such as the virtual mutiny virus, which was suspected to be from a civilization before the Great Reboot. However, it was not enough to be used as irrefutable evidence because it was uncertain if it was a civilization in the unexplored universe or a civilization from an earlier timeline. Therefore, Bruce and the other two were not unfamiliar with the concept of this term. They were just puzzled as to why Han Xiao was so certain of the existence of the Great Reboot. Han Xiao glanced at the expressions of the three of them and slowly said, "The Great Reboot I'm talking about. The Great Reboot I'm talking about is different from what you guys understand. The transformation of the underlying laws of the universe by the ultimate civilization caused the universe to deviate from the laws of the natural end. Therefore, the time of the end was much earlier. Every Great Reboot is a brand new iteration, and new civilizations reproduce in a universe that has returned to zero. However, due to the greatly shortened development time and other factors, the possibility of the civilizations of each iteration surpassing the ultimate civilization that established the Great Reboot is infinitely lower." So this is bad news? Bruce pondered. If that's the case, if all civilizations develop from scratch, won't no one be able to survive the end of the universe and achieve the so-called, what's the popular word again? Transcendence? Han Xiao shook his head. This is what I want to say. Although the Great Reboot has returned the universe to zero, things from different iterations will be passed down to the new iteration through special methods. And this medium is the sanctum that you have been longing for. The three of them were slightly taken aback. Han Xiao continued. The goal of the original ultimate civilization to transform the universe was to continue their civilization through the reboot. They failed, but their efforts were not in vain. The sanctum is the legacy they left behind. It was originally a reserved tinder vault, but during the iterations, a special information mutation appeared and turned into the sanctum of today. This is the only thing known to not disappear in the Great Reboot. The function of the sanctum is to store the information form of every iteration, and during every Great Reboot, a portion of the information will be randomly integrated into the laws of the universe of the new iteration. Therefore, the Great Reboot of the universe will not completely return to zero. Instead, the underlying laws will constantly change in one iteration after another. In this way, the results of each iteration will be passed down to the subsequent iterations. For example, the current secondary dimension world is the legacy of the previous iteration and is not a natural phenomenon. So, what you mean is the universe we're living in now is not the most primitive universe, but a world that has been changed countless times? The sanctum is equivalent to a processing device? Lewis asked tentatively. Han Xiao nodded. More or less, generations of civilizations have treated the sanctum as a breakthrough to survive the Great Reboot, so the sanctum has continuously mutated and developed various new functions. The sanctum revival is just one of them. The most important thing about the sanctum is that it stores all the information of all the civilizations of the past iterations, as well as their last words before the end of the world. It's all for the future generations to refer to. This is a long relay across countless iterations, just for someone to break this cycle one day. Hearing this, the three of them were surprised. Although Han Zhao's tone was very calm, when they thought of the scene of generations of civilizations relaying the same goal, they could not help but be stunned by this magnificent undertaking. However, after 2 seconds, the three of them came back to their senses, and their breathing suddenly became heavy. At this moment, they suddenly realized that if what Black Star said was true, then the information stored in the sanctum of the various iterations was an inestimable amount of wealth. Black Star was holding this wealth alone. If he did not say it, they would not be able to touch it at all. However, instead of developing it himself, he chose to say it. Was he so selfless? It was precisely because they had figured this out that the three of them were even more shocked. They fell silent for a moment, silently digesting the shock in their hearts. After a while, the ethereal Pope said hesitantly, "You want to cooperate with us to develop this sanctum? Is it because you want to survive the Great Reboot? Although what you said just now is indeed shocking, allow me to be frank. The so-called Great Reboot should still be very far away from us, right? Isn't it a little too early to worry about this?" Hearing this, Han Xiao smiled faintly. "You think it's too early?" Seeing this, the ethereal Pope could not help but widen his eyes in shock. Could it be that our universe has already reached the end, and the Great Reboot is coming? The other two trembled, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. It wasn't easy for us to defeat the World Tree Civilization and enjoy a rare moment of relaxation. I didn't expect. Mar Bruce had mixed feelings. However, Han Xiao shook his head. "You're mistaken. It's still early for our iteration to reach the end." The three of them heaved a sigh of relief. However, before they could completely relax, Han Xiao suddenly said something shocking, stunning the three of them. "But you've already rebooted." As soon as he finished speaking, the ethereal Pope's body trembled, and his face was filled with shock. "What do you mean by that?" "For times." Han Xiao raised 4 fingers and slowly said, "Our universe has already been rebooted 4 times. In the previous iteration, you were the ultimate civilization. You activated an information form stripping plan and successfully survived the Great Reboot. However, you did not truly enter the new universe of the next iteration. Instead, you became a sealed dark side universe, circulating and rebooting on your own. In other words, you're all people who have died a few times, but you don't know it yet." The three of them were dumbfounded, and they did not know what to do. Han Xiao had been farming the First Sanctum's authority all this time, going in and out. Each time, the time spent was getting shorter and shorter. When his authority reached level 15, the flow of time finally converged. The time ratio between the main universe and the Sanctum was 1-to-1, and the contents of the message board were all unlocked. At this point, Han Xiao gradually understood everything. The messages from the 4th to the last paragraph of the Sanctum were actually all left behind by the 3 Universal Civilizations iteration. The Celestial Star Alliance was located in the 5th last paragraph, which was the previous iteration of the 3 Universal Civilizations. The 4th last paragraph was the new iteration after the Great Reboot. The 3 Universal Civilizations were the ultimate civilizations developed by the new iteration. At that time, there was no such thing as a world tree. The 3 Universal Civilizations slowly multiplied and finally successfully discovered the Sanctum, understanding all the information about the iterations. Because the plan of the Celestial Star Alliance in the previous iteration was very feasible, the 3 Universal Civilizations inherited it and improved it, forming the information form stripping plan. However, the 3 Universal Civilizations at that time knew very well that with their accumulation, they did not have absolute confidence in surviving the Great Reboot, so they did not want to put all their eggs in one basket. Therefore, the real goal of this plan was not to completely overcome the Great Reboot, but to buy more time for themselves. They stripped the multiverse of the information form and tried to imitate the operation of the Celestial Star Alliance, existing in the form of secondary dimensions and dark side universes in the new iteration, continuously rebooting. However, the difference was that the 3 Universal Civilizations followed the Celestial Star Alliance's train of thought and stood on the shoulders of giants to carry out almost perfect improvements. Thus, they successfully stripped the entire iteration's information form and formed a closed dark side universe in the next iteration. It existed based on the information form, like a virtual world, parallel development with a faster flow of time. Just like parallel lines, it was difficult to intersect with the real iteration's main universe, and it was difficult to interfere with each other. After Han Xiao learned about the contents of the message board, he sorted out the time relationship. If the Celestial Star Alliance was the first iteration, then the 3 Universal Civilizations would be the final civilization of the second iteration. They would activate the information form stripping plan and transform into the dark side universe of the third iteration, and the third iteration would be the current true iteration. It was also here that Han Xiao realized that the Sanctum would not actually leave an empty information form shell for the current iteration. There was no such thing as a tombstone. The empty light spheres of the three universal civilizations and the World Tree civilization that he had seen in the Sanctum were actually remnants of the second iteration. The reason why there was no content inside was because they had been stripped and became the dark side universe of the third iteration. However, the cycle of the dark side universe was not as unchanging as the Celestial Star Alliance. Instead, it formed a small reboot operating law. The three universal civilizations of the second iteration made use of the characteristics of the Sanctum to add new laws every time the universe was rebooted, allowing the cycle of the dark side universe to be affected by the Sanctum. What was different from the Great Reboot was that every small reboot of the dark side universe did not return to zero, but was formed based on an established information form template. In other words, there would definitely be forces such as the three universal civilizations. Before the three universal civilizations came into contact with the Sanctum, their development trajectory was basically the same. Han Xiao called this situation the dark side iteration. Therefore, every time the dark side universe was rebooted, it would add a dark side iteration's improvement result. It was just that there was a probability of information form mutation happening. The three universal civilizations used this method to buy time for themselves and obtain more trial and error opportunities. However, this plan could not bring eternity. After calculation, there was a limit to the information form stripping plan. Their dark side universe would at most exist in the third iteration. If there was another great reboot and they entered the fourth iteration, their dark side universe would disappear, unless they could enter the real iteration's main universe from the dark side universe and turn from virtual to real. Therefore, after the three universal civilizations successfully entered the dark side universe, their goal became to break the seal of the dark side universe and return to the real main universe of the third iteration. The third to the first message on the Sanctum's message board represented the three dark side iterations of the dark side universe. Currently, Han Xiao was in the fourth dark side iteration, and these four dark side iterations all happened during the third iteration. Because the Sanctum was not affected by the iterations, the three universal civilizations used the Sanctum's message board to record the experience of every trial and error, allowing the next dark side iterations themselves to improve the route based on the previous experience. They also created some key devices to improve the situation of the next dark side iteration. This was the origin of the World Tree. The three universal civilizations added an information form materialization device in the second dark side iteration, the second to last message. But in the third dark side iteration, an information form mutation occurred. It turned from mechanical device into a world tree with life and went berserk. This was Han Zhao's experience when he was a player in his previous life. In the end, the three universal civilizations of the third dark side iteration still opened the Sanctum and understood everything. Thus, they left behind the control valve of the information form materialization device. In the current fourth dark side iteration, an information form mutation occurred and inherited the nature of restraint. The only change was that it became the natural enemy of the World Tree, which was the pivotal snake. On the other hand, in the second dark side iteration, the three universal civilizations used the information form materialization device that had yet to mutate and failed in the end. They discovered that the reason was that they lacked a bridge to the true state. Han Xiao also understood the concept of the so-called true state. It actually referred to the information carrier that existed in the real universe of the iteration. In other words, the dark side universe had to form an information connection with the real universe of the iteration and be able to interfere with each other for the information form materialization device to work. Thus, the three universal civilizations of the second dark side iteration carried out a plan to change the underlying laws of the next dark side iteration, causing the two parallel lines of the dark side universe and the real universe of the iteration to shift and eventually intersect. The result was that in the third dark side iteration, the underlying laws of the dark side universe changed, and it successfully projected itself into reality. It successfully obtained a portion of the information carriers of the real universe of the iteration, which was the existence of players. Through the method of logging in, this group of individuals living in the real universe of the iteration transformed their true state into an information form and pulled them into the dark side universe, forming an information intertwining and acting as an information interface. This was what countless players in Han Zhao's previous life had experienced. However, the World Tree went berserk in the third dark side iteration. After the World Tree War, in his previous life, the three universal civilizations obtained the Sanctum Pathway from the Holy Covenant organization and learned everything. They inherited the foundation of countless civilizations, and their technology improved by leaps and bounds. On a level that the players could not come into contact with, the three universal civilizations formulated a new plan. They gathered the power of civilization and created the control valve of the World Tree. At the same time, they reduced the cost of dealing with the World Tree's berserk in the fourth dark side iteration. Other than that, due to the player's version update, the three universal civilizations of the third dark side iteration felt that this form of true state bridge was not stable enough. So they decided to spend a huge amount of resources to strengthen the true state connection in the next dark side iteration. Because the dark side universe and the real universe of the iteration had already formed a preliminary information interference, the three universal civilizations decided to build a stable interference bridge instead of intermittent like logging in. The only targets they could choose were these information individual records that had already logged into the dark side universe. Thus, they randomly selected targets and completely entered the dark side universe, forming a stable connection. As long as this train of thought was correct, the dark side universe could be reversed through this interference bridge, transforming from the information form to the true state, escaping the seal, and returning to the real universe of the iteration. To put it in a better way, it was like installing a loading pack for the so-called reality. The content inside included the entire dark side universe and the entire galaxy world. This was the truth that Han Zhao knew from the Sanctum. As for what happened after that, there was no record of it on the Sanctum's message board. After learning all of this, he had a rough guess of what happened after that. He suspected that the reason he was reborn was actually because he was randomly selected to become a stable interference bridge that strengthened the information entanglement between the dark side universe and the real universe of the iteration. His information form had been completely captured, and he had come to this dark side universe from reality. Therefore, his reality had disappeared, and there was no more information about him. Han Zhao suspected that this was the reason why he had not seen his other self, who should be a player, all these years. As for the fourth dark side iteration of the dark side universe, it caused the time of the real universe to go back 10 years. There were no records or explanations on the message board. Han Zhao did not know the reason, but he guessed that it was because when the third dark side iteration captured him, the information interference with the real universe of the iteration deepened, so it affected the other party's time. However, he did not know if this was a universal reversal of time or a small-scale change. However, from another perspective, this was also proof that the dark side universe's idea of using the true state to create information entanglement was correct. It could already produce substantial changes to the real universe of the iteration. Han Zhao had roughly pieced together all the causes and effects through the Sanctum records and his own guesses. In his opinion, the reliability of this series of guesses was more than 70%. Han Zhao hid a portion of his speculations and explained the secrets to them. After hearing all of this, Mar Bruce, Lewis, and the ethereal Pope only had shock and disbelief left on their faces. They looked at Han Zhao blankly with their mouths slightly agape. They were completely dumbfounded. The ethereal Pope was dumbfounded. Although they were the leaders of the three universal civilizations and had seen countless storms, the information that Han Zhao had given them was already beyond their acceptable range. Their brains short-circuited. After a long time, Mar Bruce turned to look at Lewis and said hesitantly, That. Do you understand? Wait for me to think about it. Mar Bruce replied blankly. I participated in the event in Hainan and finished a little late. I finished writing a little late today. Thank you to the leader of the writer's assistant for the 100,000 reward. End of chapter. Chapter 1473. The three of them digested it for a while before they finally understood the information that Han Xiao had revealed. Lewis was a little hesitant. Black Star, you're not tricking us, are you? Unfortunately, not this time. Han Xiao shrugged. Mar Bruce had a strange expression as he pondered and said, In other words, we're all people who have died and been reborn several times. It's equivalent to being trapped in a sealed secondary dimension. And our final goal is to break through this secondary dimension and return to the main universe? Although the difference is quite big, you can understand it that way. Han Xiao blinked. What you mean is that everything that our civilization has experienced from nothing is destined to happen. It has already happened several times, and it was personally created by us in the past. That's more or less it. Han Xiao nodded. Wait for me to calm down. The ethereal Pope pressed his forehead and felt his blood pressure soaring. Suddenly being hit by so much information, the three of them felt that their worldview had been shattered. In front of such a situation, they realized that all the political and military issues they usually considered were insignificant. So, we're that powerful, Mar Bruce muttered with shock still on his face. Han Xiao mercilessly interrupted his imagination. It's not you guys who are powerful, but the ultimate three universal civilizations. Compared to your peak selves in the past, you guys are just three younger brothers. Don't flatter the current three universal civilizations. Without me, you guys would still know nothing. The three of them felt a little hurt. Although this is the truth, can't you let us indulge in our fantasies for a while? However, no matter what, after suddenly learning these secrets, the three of them still had an inexplicable mentality, and they felt that their backs were straighter. Black Star, you really gave us a shock. Mar Bruce smiled bitterly. My mind is in a mess now. I don't know what to do. Han Xiao raised his brows and joked. Didn't you say you've seen a lot? Have you seen this before? Ahem. I think we should talk about how to break the seal of the dark side universe and return to the real universe. The ethereal hierarch's face darkened. He quickly changed the topic, not wanting to admit that he had been careless. However, Han Xiao did not answer directly. He changed the topic and said slowly, I know that you guys still have some doubts in your hearts and think that I'm making this up. When you enter the sanctum and confirm that the information I provided is correct, we'll talk about what to do next. By the way, let me remind you that you need permission to read the messages of the iterations in the sanctum. The first time you enter, you can only know the basic situation at most, which is information about the iterations, the Great Reboot, and so on. As for information about the dark side iterations and the cycle restarting, you won't be able to see them for the time being. I only found out about these things after I fully unlocked my permission. Oh, so that's how it is. The three of them had not witnessed the effects of the sanctum with their own eyes, so they could only listen obediently to Han Zhao's explanation. However, they mostly believed him because there was no need for Black Star to lie to them about something that could be easily verified. However, the three of them still felt an itch in their hearts. This feeling was like watching a suspense movie. They had only watched the beginning, and Black Star knew all the details, but did not tell them who the murderer was. This made them very curious. However, the three of them still had concerns and did not dare to completely believe what Han Xiao said. They would only be at ease after entering the sanctum and taking a look. I'll send you the way to enter the sanctum later. I'll also synthesize 3 sanctum keys for you guys. You guys can go in yourselves, lest you say that I did something. Han Xiao waved his hand and said casually. Only he could quickly generate the sanctum keys. Even the 3 universal civilizations, who were rich in resources, needed time to collect materials. Therefore, without his help, the 3 universal civilizations would not be able to enter and leave the sanctum frequently. This was also why he had the confidence to control the sanctum, so he did not mind letting the 3 universal civilizations enter the sanctum. That's the best. The three of them hurriedly nodded like obedient children. All right, then you guys digest the truth of the universe iterations first. I won't disturb you guys anymore. I'll send you the information later. Han Xiao nodded and hung up. The remote projection disappeared, and Bruce and the other two looked at each other with different expressions. I didn't expect Black Star to bring such information. If what he said is true, then we'll have to replan our future development. That's right. If the situation is true, then there's no point in us developing peacefully here. We have to break through fate and fulfill the wishes of our previous lives to enter the so-called real universe. Let's not talk about this for now. Let's start from the beginning. The three of them gathered their heads together and discussed intensely. Super's Holy Land, leader's office. Han Zhao's eyes flashed, and he returned to his room. Complicated emotions appeared in his eyes. He had pretended to be confident in front of the three universal civilizations, but in fact, when he found out the truth from the sanctum, he was also shocked, but it also solved his doubts for many years. In fact, Han Xiao still had many secret guesses that he had not told the three universal civilizations rulers earlier. For example, the existence of the interface. In his opinion, there were three possibilities. Firstly, the interface was a special product formed when the true state of the iterated universe was transformed into the information state of the dark side universe. It was like a high-dimensional object that had a special advantage when it descended to a low-dimensional world. It was like a piece of paper that humans could see through at a glance, or it was a part of the information that low-dimensional worlds could not express. The second possibility was a product of information mutation. The third guess was that the three universal civilizations of the second dark side iteration projected the information collection of the dark side universe into the real universe and pulled the true state through logging in. The interface was a necessary medium to complete this step. It could be considered a special tractor or recorder, so it might have been specially created by the three universal civilizations in the past to ensure that the true state remained in the dark side universe for a long time. However, no matter which one it was, the interface was unique to the dark side universe and could not enter the real universe. The evidence that Han Xiao deduced this was that the interface would disappear when he entered the sanctum. Because the sanctum did not only exist in the dark side universe, the interface lost its effect there. Han Xiao also had some guesses about his special interface. In his opinion, this was either a life guarantee that the three universal civilizations of the third dark side iteration deliberately created for the information individual who had completely entered the dark side universe in order to build a stable interference bridge, ensuring that he could live stably in the dark side universe and reduce the chances of him dying due to various accidents. Or it was the result of the information mutation of the normal interface after the dark side iteration. According to the various performances of the interface, Han Xiaoxin was more inclined to the former. When the interface triggered a mission, it would often reveal more information in the mission introduction. Because the development trajectory of the dark side universe was almost fixed, it was completely possible for the three universal civilizations of the third dark side iteration to improve the interface to such a profit function. Of course, it did not rule out the possibility that their own interface had the hidden principle of monitoring the entire dark side universe. In addition, when the players went online, true state intervention, he could only enter the player forums through the interface and spy on the information exchange of a group of true states. During the version update period, the forums were also frozen for him. From this point of view, the special interface on his body was indeed an important medium and channel to communicate with the true states. This reminded Han Xiao of the two information threads he saw on the interface when he used the information form obliteration vision. One was connected to him, while the other extended infinitely. Now that he thought about it, this end represented the connection of the entire dark side universe. This seemed to support this idea. On the other hand, Han Xiao also speculated on the principle of the flow of time in the version update. In the mainstream scientific theory of the galaxy, time was relative and not absolute. From this point of view, and based on the contents of the Sanctum message board, He felt that the time of the dark side universe and the real universe had nothing to do with each other. There was only a difference in relative speed. The real universe was the foundation of the third iteration, and the dark side universe had to be attached to it. However, the relative time flow of the dark side universe was faster, and the two sides did not affect each other. However, when the players went online and caused the dark side universe and the real universe to be entangled, the time flow of both sides would be embedded. The time of the dark side universe and the real universe would flow at a stable ratio, which was 1:6. The reason behind this was that the real universe was still in the dominant position, and the players whose foundation existed in the real universe would not be affected in the reverse direction. When the true states of the players who temporarily logged and disappeared, the degree of information interference plummeted. Thus, the time flow of the dark side universe was disconnected from the real universe. The form of this conjecture was that the version update only took 1 or 2 days for the players, but many years had passed in the galaxy world. Han Xiao felt that this possibility was not small. He even suspected that starting from the second dark side iteration, the frequent information mutation of the dark side universe was very likely caused by the introduction of the true state in the third dark side iteration. If the real universe and the sanctums were regarded as higher dimensional existences, then the projection would be distorted and distortion would occur, causing the information materialization device of the third dark side iteration to become the world tree, and the control valve of the fourth dark side iteration to become the pivotal snake. Other than this reason, perhaps the dark side universe is the same as the Celestial Star Alliance dimension. Only an external information carrier can greatly change the development trajectory, bring new variables, and add accidents. Even if the dark side universe is not a rigid cycle, it might still need such a variable. Han Zhao's eyes changed. Although many of these theories were guesses that he had deduced based on the truth revealed by the sanctums, he felt that the possibility was very high. Even if this is a long relay that crosses iterations, every civilization definitely wants to be the last one. As long as there's a glimmer of hope, every civilization wants to continue. No one wants to go extinct. It's understandable for the three universal civilizations to do so, but Han Xiao shook his head with complicated feelings. If all his deductions were correct, then he was the hope of the entire dark side universe. However, to him, this was a multiple-choice question. Chapter 1474. Cha. Han Xiao opened the cabinet and took out an unopened box of Red Empire cigarettes. He tore open the packaging and took out a black cigarette wrapped in golden patterns. He rubbed it with his finger, and electric sparks flashed. He lit it up, put it in his mouth, and slowly took a puff. Green smoke rose and covered his complicated expression. His disappointed eyes were faintly discernible in the smoke. Ever since he entered the galaxy, Han Xiao had basically stopped smoking. He had not tasted cigarettes for nearly 100 years, but today, he lit one. This was not an easy choice. If his hometown was the real universe of the current iteration, then once the dark side universe returned, it would be like a dove occupying a magpie's nest. Countless powerful civilizations would sweep through the galaxy. Han Xiao did not know if there were any advanced civilizations in the real universe of the current iteration because his hometown was only a surface civilization and could not explore the entire universe. However, as an information interface, his hometown would definitely be the first to welcome the change. To his hometown, he did not know if this was a good thing or a bad thing. The only thing he could be sure of was that his hometown would definitely not be able to develop freely. It would definitely be interfered with by advanced civilizations, just like the various small civilizations and surface civilizations in the galactic society. However, the three universal civilizations, who had already gone through 4 dark side iterations, were already half a step into the real universe. They were only 1 step away from the Great Reboot. This was the final dream passed down by the final civilizations after countless iterations. Now that he had the ability to help them succeed, was he going to sit back and watch the efforts of the 3 universal civilizations go to waste? Or was he going to give them the final boost? Although Han Xiao was conflicted, he knew that he already had an answer in his heart. Revealing the information about the sanctums to the three universal civilizations was to help him make up his mind not to look back. This was a great undertaking of countless iterations. It was a great honor for him to be one of them. In addition, this was also related to the survival of a universe. The time he had lived in the Galactic Society had long exceeded the length of his life in the real universe. It was impossible to say that he did not have any feelings for the Galactic Society. Furthermore, with Han Zhao's current experience, he felt that the possibility of his hometown becoming the final civilization of the current iteration was slim. Perhaps even becoming a star system civilization was an extravagant hope, and the future was bleak. In the middle of the 21st century, before he entered the dark side universe, the social problems in his hometown were already very acute. Like a train that had been overloaded for many years, all kinds of failures followed one after another. Due to the complicated geopolitical situation, the entire civilization wasted and squandered precious birthplace resources, and the efficiency of resource utilization was low. There were many problems that could only be solved before entering the interstellar era to minimize the cost. His home planet had not formed a highly efficient collective consciousness when the technology level was still low. Once such an opportunity was missed, it would be hard to see it again. As the saying went, a small boat was easier to turn around, but the larger the size, the harder it would be to turn back. Any slight movement could trigger an internal crisis that could destroy the entire civilization. Although there might be a turnaround in his hometown in the future, according to the trend before Han Zhao entered the dark side universe, the development of his hometown was really precarious and barely surviving when analyzed on the scale of civilization and the universe. Therefore, after the birth of the virtual network in his previous life, it quickly became a haven for countless people to escape from reality. Based on this trend, the final outcome of his hometown might be natural death, or it might be destroyed or captured by an unknown foreign civilization. In his eyes, most of the areas in his hometown did not have the potential to become a universe overlord, unless there were no competitors. However, due to the existence of the sanctum, this was obviously impossible. Therefore, Han Zhao felt that since it was difficult for his hometown to become the winner of a single iteration, when the conversion of the dark side universe was completed, it would also bring with it a successful plan to survive the Great Reboot, bringing with it countless resources and technology. The final civilization of the current iteration might not have grown up yet, and the three universal civilizations would most likely replace it and rule it for a long time. This was somewhat unfair to the civilization of the current iteration, but in this regard, civilizations would not be modest. It was difficult for the weak to choose their own fate. Of course, it was not impossible to rule out the possibility that a strong civilization already existed in the real universe, but the civilization level of his hometown was too low to know. In addition, Han Zhao felt that coming to the dark side universe seemed to be the credit of the three universal civilizations, so he should return the favor. In the end, I still have my own selfish motives. Han Zhao narrowed his eyes and suddenly shook his head with a self-deprecating tone. He had never thought of himself as a selfless person. Apart from these concerns that involved the overall situation, there were also personal reasons that made him choose to convert the dark side universe. He seemed to have used up all his luck to become this stable interference bridge that was randomly selected. If he stood by and did nothing, the dark side universe would only experience another cycle of rebooting, and it might not have much of an impact here. However, in the next dark side iteration, the dark side universe would pull in a new true state carrier and become a new stable interference bridge to replace him. Due to his special identity, Han Zhao could not guarantee that he would become a member of the dark side universe's cycle of development after the dark side iteration. Becoming a transcendent might not necessarily mean transcending the iterations. The little reboot of the dark side universe might still make him disappear. Instead of saying that his choice was saving the dark side universe, it was better to say that he was saving himself. Therefore, this might be his only chance, and Han Zhao did not want to take the risk. Phew! So this is a full-scale invasion? Thinking of this, Han Xiaoxin calmed down and stopped smoking. He put out the cigarette that was only 1/3 burnt in the ashtray without hesitation. A few days later, in a military-restricted area in the central galaxy, 3 small spaceships hovered outside the bastion, ready to set off. In the military command tower at the side, the remote projections of the 3 universal civilizations' rulers stood in front of the window, staring at the 3 spaceships outside with nervous and expectant expressions. The operators in the room were adjusting the parameters in front of the instruments. At this moment, Han Zhao's remote projection appeared in the room, attracting the attention of the 3 of them. "How's the preparation?" "We've already filled the sanctum key into the synthesis device according to the method you provided to open the sanctum. We're just waiting for it to be used," Bruce immediately replied. Han Xiao nodded. "What about the candidates to enter the sanctum?" Lewis said with a deep voice, "We've all chosen an elite spaceship. Their loyalty is reliable. Olu will lead me, and Claudia will lead the Red Empire." Han Xiao looked at the ethereal pope. "What about you? Are you letting Wernos lead?" "I originally planned to let Wernos enter the sanctum, but he happened to leave some time ago, so I didn't choose him and found another direct descendant." The ethereal pope shook his head. "Is that so? Then he left at a really bad time." Han Zhao's expression was a little strange. Due to the fact that the sanctum authority needed to be accumulated, he did not know if the Arcane Church would still let Wernos become a sanctum explorer again when he returned. Well, he had missed out on another great benefit. He always felt that he would miss out on anything good. This guy was really unlucky. Seeing that Han Xiao did not say anything, Lewis said, "If there's nothing else to ask, shall we begin?" "Go ahead, I'll watch from here." Han Xiao nodded. Hearing this, Bruce nodded and gave the order in the command channel. Very soon, a few rays of light shot out from the military fortress and gathered in midair, slowly turning into 3 sanctum passageways. The sanctum keys provided by Han Xiao led to different sanctums. At this time, they opened together, and the 3 universal civilizations each entered one. Han Xiao had seen this scene many times, so he did not have much of a reaction. However, the 3 universal civilizations' leaders widened their eyes and stared at the changes in the scenery outside the window, as if they wanted to remember all the details of the sanctum passageway. The next moment, the 3 spaceships started and drove into different sanctum passageways. Then, the light of the sanctum spun and shrank, disappearing from everyone's sight. Only at this moment did the 3 universal civilizations' leaders relax. They heaved a sigh of relief, and their hearts were filled with anticipation and anxiety. They were afraid that something unexpected would happen to the 3 teams on their trip to the sanctum, or that they would not bring back the information they wanted. It's their first time entering the sanctum, so their authority is very low. The difference in the flow of time is very big, so it will take them a long time to return. Han Xiao explained. Bruce nodded absent-mindedly. Suddenly, he thought of something and turned to Han Xiao. "Since it will take them a long time to return, let's not wait for them during this time. We might as well use it to solve some important problems." Han Xiao raised his brows. "What do you want to do?" Bruce pondered and said, "Originally, we wanted to wait until the Galactic Society recovered most of its vitality before launching a military operation against the Star Alliance. But the information you brought overturned our strategic plan, so I feel that it's better to solve this hidden danger as soon as possible. However, we alone can't solve the war with the highest efficiency, so you want to ask for my help?" Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and continued. "That's what I meant." Bruce quickly nodded. Han Xiao turned to look at the other 2. "You guys have the same idea? I hope Your Excellency Blackstar can help." Lewis and the ethereal sect leader nodded calmly. Ever since they knew the truth about the iterations of the universe, their mentality had been quite carefree. They were all in the same boat, and helping each other was helping themselves. They were no longer as reserved as before, and they were just short of hugging Han Zhao's thigh and calling him daddy. "You guys are really not polite. Let me study it." Looking at the 3 of them, Han Zhao's mouth twitched. He originally did not want to interfere in this matter, but then again, with the current situation, If he did not settle the Star Alliance as soon as possible, there would be more variables in the Dark Side Universe conversion plan. It was indeed not good. Han Shao thought for a moment and said slowly, "Of course, it would be best if we could solve this problem with less bloodshed. I hope that my intervention can make them accept the reality faster. P.S. I just want to be self-reliant by Mid-Autumn Moon Ming." Chapter 1475. What? Black Star and the three universal civilizations have reached a private agreement to develop the Sanctum together. The Star Arc leader's surprised voice sounded in the Supercluster Alliance's conference room. A civilization leader nodded with a solemn expression. "I received some news. Black Star seems to have really shared the information of the Sanctum with the three universal civilizations. Is the news reliable?" The Star Arc leader's expression became serious. "It's very credible." Hearing this, the expressions of the Supercluster leaders changed. The three universal civilizations did not hide Black Star's sharing of the Sanctum. This was not a secret that could not be found out, but they did not announce it to the public. After knowing the current situation, they did not have the intention to do so for the time being. Otherwise, they would have publicized it in order to increase their reputation. The composition of the three Sanctum keys that Han Shao had given out, as well as the purpose and method of entering the Sanctum, were the secrets that the three universal civilizations kept. Outsiders could not find out, so the Supercluster Alliance only knew the surface of the cooperation between the two sides to develop the Sanctum, but they did not know the specific reasons and details. This is really strange. The three universal civilizations, the Super's Holy Land, and us are already in a tripartite situation. The Sanctum is the core competitiveness of the Super's Holy Land. Isn't Black Star helping the enemy? What does he mean? The Star Arc leader's face was filled with confusion. Indeed, I don't understand either. Why would Black Star need to share the Sanctum with the three universal civilizations? Another civilization leader was confused. In the past, when the Beyond Grade, as were still in the association, they did not share the information of the Sanctum in the face of the suppression of the three universal civilizations. Now, the Super's Holy Land is already a giant organization. They are not inferior to the three universal civilizations at all. Why would they give out the information of the Sanctum? Could it be that the three universal civilizations have something on them? I don't think Black Star can be threatened by the three universal civilizations. There must be other reasons. Black Star might have other motives. We can't even rule out the possibility of them reaching a deep strategic cooperation. The World Tree has already been dealt with. What other strategic cooperation can they have? Could it be that they are fighting that third-party spy? Was there a need for that? Be it the three universal civilizations or Black Star himself, they can deal with that Star Alliance alone, right? At this time, one of the civilization leaders hesitated and said carefully, "Have you ever considered that they might be working together to deal with us?" As soon as he finished speaking, the room fell silent. After a long while, the Star Arc leader swallowed his saliva and probed. I don't think it's possible. We're the lubricant between them. They probably won't join forces to deal with us. I don't think so. Someone worriedly disagreed. Could it be that our attitude of waiting for the best offer is too blatant and has angered both of them? Hearing this, everyone panicked and didn't know what to do. After the post-war situation was established, they circled around between the three universal civilizations and the Super's Holy Land, jumping around repeatedly to maintain the balance. Originally, according to the initial analysis, the three universal civilizations needed to form an alliance with them to keep the Super's Holy Land in check. Therefore, they would definitely change their ways and take out a lot of benefits to rope them in. The initial trend was the same. They were finally no longer suppressed and had the space to develop freely. They use an alternative method to achieve their original motive for migrating. Logically speaking, if not for the rise of the Super's Holy Land, the supercluster would not have been able to do as they wished. Black Star had contributed to this, but due to the balance of power, they could not lean too close to the Super's Holy Land. Otherwise, the three universal civilizations would definitely explode. Therefore, they had no choice but to temporarily put aside the deep alliance agreement with Black Star and turn it into a shallow cooperation. The Super's Holy Land did not say anything about this. They even specially called Black Star to apologize, and the other party expressed that he did not mind. Therefore, the Supercluster Alliance had always been very at ease and felt that there was no problem with this route. They hoped to maintain a good working relationship with both sides. However, now that Black Star and the three universal civilizations had done this, they immediately lost confidence. This feeling was like there were two enemies who did not deal with each other, and he maintained a good relationship with both of them. As the glue of the three of them, he let everyone play together. However, one day, the two enemies suddenly reconciled and put their arms around each other's shoulders. They actually did not bring him along to play, and he became the third person who was isolated. This was very uncomfortable. I think we still need to analyze it, but we can't rule out that there's such a factor at play. We need to think about our attitude towards the Super's Holy Land and the three universal civilizations. We can't be too cold, the Star Arc leader said with a heavy tone. The more the upper echelons of the supercluster thought about it, the more they felt guilty. They were paranoid and scared themselves. In the unexplored universe, the capital of the Star Alliance, ever since the World Tree fully invaded, the situation of the three universal civilizations has become more and more difficult. In nearly 2 years, they have already lost nearly 6% of their territory. Originally, I thought that they would be able to hold on for a few decades, but it seems like I overestimated them. The three universal civilizations can't resist the attack of the World Tree at all. With this trend, the three universal civilizations will definitely be completely defeated in 5 to 6 years, or even 13 to 14 years. In a conference room, the leader of the Star Alliance and the leaders of the allied civilizations all had smiles on their faces. The room was filled with joy. In the past year or so, when the World Tree invaded the Galactic Society, they had been living a very happy life. Even their walking was light. Every time they finished reading the battle report sent by the spies, they would look forward to the next one, because it was always full of surprises. The more miserable the Galactic Society was, the happier they would be. The leader of the Star Alliance knocked on the table and said with a smile, "In the past year or so, the three universal civilizations have almost been completely defeated by the World Tree. Black Star was ambushed and heavily injured, exceeding the upper limit of his indestructible body. He had no choice but to fall into a deep sleep and slowly recuperate. Therefore, the Sanctum Revival has been temporarily stopped. According to the intelligence, he is now the spiritual pillar of the Galactic Society against the foreign enemies." Once Black Star fell, the morale of the Galactic Alliance army collapsed, and they were forced to retreat on the battlefield. Therefore, it's obvious that without Black Star, the Galactic Alliance army is just a bunch of mobs. Not bad, not bad. The leader of the Lore civilization, Savines, chuckled. Furthermore, the previous 2 battle reports said that the mother planets of the 3 universal civilizations were frequently attacked, and they had no choice but to let the upper echelons take refuge. During the voyage, the spaceship of the Red Empire was ambushed on a large scale, and the current leader, Mar Bruce, was cut in half at the waist. The previous ruler of the Empire, Unravel, was captured by the members of the World Tree. It is said that the national pillar, Claudia, was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of his head. He went to save her alone and was captured in the end. However, Izzle was firm. Therefore, the World Tree gathered the members and violated Unravel in front of him again and again, destroying Claudia's will. Only then did the World Tree devour him and turn him into a slave. Speaking of which, the peak beyond grade as of the Galactic Society are either dead or injured. Manison's main body of the Mecha Empire was exposed and turned into a slave by the World Tree. All of his assets were used against the enemy. Kasui's mind was shattered, and he became a fool. Wernos was forced to participate in the battle, and the ethereal national treasure was almost shattered. These battle reports were all made up by the spies who had already rebelled under the orders of Han Shao. He had even added a lot of personal information into it. It was quite exciting. As for the people involved in the battle reports, they did not know anything. They did not know that Han Shao was making up stories about them. The members of the Star Alliance talked about the good news in the previous battle reports with great interest. They could not wait to see the miserable lives of the people of the Galactic Society with their own eyes and laugh to their heart's content. Everyone chatted and laughed for a while. The leader of the Star Alliance restrained his expression, knocked on the table, and said seriously, "Although the defeat of the three universal civilizations is a foregone conclusion, we have finally eliminated a huge threat and a competitor. However, the World Tree is a new threat. When the war ends, we still need to pay attention to the World Tree." Savines immediately agreed. That's right. The failure of the three universal civilizations has already proven how terrifying they are. Even if we develop to the height of the three universal civilizations, we will not be their match. But time is on our side. As long as we continue to develop, sooner or later, just as the leader of the Star Alliance was about to look forward to the future to cheer everyone on, the conference room was suddenly knocked open. Bang! A secretary rushed in anxiously. His expression was extremely anxious, and there was a strong sense of panic in his eyes. "Leaders, something bad has happened. Traces of the World Tree Army have been found in our territory. The World Tree is attacking." "What? Walala." The expressions of all the upper echelons of the Star Alliance present changed drastically, and they all stood up. Monster Synthesis Master, written by Zhuge Wanjun. The theme is quite interesting. Description: Link, by accident, joined the ranks of the Starting Point Army. Returning to the virtual reality MMORPG Destiny half a year ago, he became a nameless NPC in the game. Surrounded by dangers, he accidentally activated an artifact that can synthesize monsters. Gold plus mouse equals treasure-seeking mouse. Metal plus desert ant nest equals silver undead marching ant. Meteorite plus rotten blue whale equals biochemical metal leviathan. Thus, a monster synthesis master was born. Link had the villain on his left and the player on his right. He was having a lot of fun harvesting leaks. 6 years later, Link drove his super fortress and looked at the Starlight Devourer, magic energy phoenix, Zerqueen that he had personally created. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. 3 years after 3 years. Paul the Great, if you still don't appear, I will be treated as a boss by the players. End of chapter. Chapter 1476. In the Star Alliance, in the Margus star system, a long and narrow spatial rift traversed the starry sky like a knife cutting open the stomach of the universe. Endless green tides sprayed out from within. Countless World Tree battleships flew out of the wormhole, forming an army. They turned into dense streams of light and scattered in all directions, attacking the planets on the star map. The World Tree fleet traveled extremely quickly. Not long after, a bustling planet appeared in front of them. The defense forces of this planet had already risen into the sky and were distributed in outer space, ready to defend against the invasion. Buzz! At this moment, a ray of light flashed in the distance. A huge fleet of starships covered in starlight rapidly approached. The outer armor of the spaceships was engraved with the mark of the Star Alliance. This was the rapid support team that the military had sent out urgently. They happened to be stationed in the nearby military fortress and were in charge of maintaining the security in the area. In the flagship of the Star Alliance's rapid support team, the middle-aged commander with a strong temperament gripped the edge of the table tightly with both hands. He gritted his teeth and looked out of the window at the enemy that was countless times more numerous than him. His heart was filled with despair as he said in a hoarse voice, "Detachment 17 and 18, land and immediately organize the people to board the ships and escape. As for the rest, attack. Stall for time." As soon as the order was given, the rapid support team did not stop and immediately launched an attack on the incoming World Tree. Facing an opponent that they could not match, the Star Alliance fleet still counterattacked. This scene was very tragic. It was like a lone army with no help. enduring the encirclement of countless enemies. However, even though they were solemn and stirring, the difference in strength would not be shortened because of this. Their fearlessness could not stop the spread of the rolling green tide. The world-ending green tide did not stop and easily drown the armed fleet. The counterattack of the Star Alliance fleet only caused a small splash before disappearing into the endless green tide. Roots tore through the sky and stabbed into this bustling city planet. They were like straws, devouring the matter and energy inside and turning them into their own nourishment. In the flagship of this World Tree fleet, the Heart Tree King looked down at the planet. His eyes lit up, and his vast psychic power covered the entire planet. He hypnotized all the living beings to give up on escaping and take the initiative to enter the roots, becoming a member of the World Tree. Seeing the last few Star Alliance battleships explode into pieces under the focus fire of the World Tree fleet, the Heart Tree King shook his head. It's just a futile struggle. He turned his head to look at the countless soldiers in the cabin and saw that every one of them had a fanatical look on their faces. War was what they were best at. Sensing the gaze of the Heart Tree King, everyone raised their arms and shouted, "For the Mother Tree, for the Father." After Black Star subdued the World Tree, he became the Father God in the hearts of all the members of the World Tree, and his will was above the Mother Tree. Heart Tree King also silently muttered before retracting his gaze and looking at the starlight in the sky. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the endless distance and lock onto the mother planet of the Star Alliance. Star Alliance capital, Joint Conference Room. Unlike the joyous atmosphere a few days ago, the room was now filled with a gloomy fog, filled with fear, despair, anxiety, and other negative feelings. Over the past few days, news of the World Tree's invasion had exploded all over the country. It was as if the entire Star Alliance was in danger overnight, and countless planets had fallen. All the higher-ups of the Star Alliance present were no longer as high-spirited as they were a few days ago. At this moment, their expressions were haggard, and their clothes were in disarray. They basically did not sleep or rest for the past few days as they argued fiercely again and again. Isn't the World Tree civilization still at war with the three universal civilizations? Why did they invade us silently? The leader of the Star Alliance frowned. He looked tired, his eyes were bloodshot, and his voice was extremely hoarse. Savines trembled slightly and said with a trembling voice, "Could it be that the World Tree civilization feels that they have already crippled the three universal civilizations and wants to fight on two fronts? What should we do?" The upper echelons of the Star Alliance frowned. They thought that the three universal civilizations were still fighting to the death with the World Tree, but because they had discovered their location, they had taken out a portion of their troops to fight them together. This feeling was like eating someone else's melon happily, but suddenly eating it themselves. They were dumbfounded. What else can we do? Since the World Tree is here, we can only resist. Someone slammed the table to hide the fear in his heart. As soon as he said that, someone objected loudly. What's there to fight for? Even the three universal civilizations are no match for the World Tree. They were crippled in a few years. We can't defend our own territories at all. We should quickly migrate the refugees, preserve the fire seed, and abandon our territory. How can we do that? We still have the strength to fight. The World Tree is wreaking havoc in our territory. As long as we send reinforcements, we will definitely be able to repel the World Tree. Another person said with a deep voice, "Bullsh *T. We don't even have enough troops. Why should we help you?" Another person shouted. This argument immediately ignited the fuse. Everyone's emotions had been like a spring that had been suppressed to the extreme in the past few days. This time, all the dissatisfaction in their hearts erupted, and they were directly divided into two groups. One side wanted to fight, while the other wanted to escape. The argument was extremely intense. If not for the fact that most of the people present were remote projections, everyone would have rolled up their sleeves and started fighting. The Star Alliance was formed by more than 40 civilizations. They were not united in the first place, and they each had their own interests. Usually, they could gather together, But facing the pressure of a powerful enemy invasion, internal differences immediately erupted. The opinions of the various member states could not be unified. Some of the upper echelons of the civilizations who did not agree with causing trouble could no longer hold back and started complaining loudly. Everyone calm down. Calm down. We still have other ways. We can't resist the world tree by ourselves. But since the three universal civilizations are in the same situation as us, maybe we can take the initiative to communicate with them and work together to fight the enemy. As for our previous schemes, we can temporarily put them aside. The most important thing is to defeat the world tree together. They will definitely know the severity of the matter. In the future, we will settle the score with the three universal civilizations. We can only talk about our own future. The leader of the Star Alliance suggested loudly, trying his best to ease the atmosphere. However, it was useless. Everyone was speechless at his suggestion and turned a deaf ear to it. They continued to argue, and the situation was getting out of control. In the past, the members of the Star Alliance would not have disrespected him like this. But now that the various civilizations were on the verge of death, no one took him seriously anymore. Everyone had a huge argument, and many people were furious. They stopped nagging and went offline. They did not plan to listen to the Star Alliance's orders anymore and decided to fly away separately. Not long after, there was only chicken feathers left in the conference room. The leader of the Star Alliance sat alone in his seat, his heart filled with bitterness. After the argument broke out in the upper echelons, the leaders of the civilizations did not hesitate to issue orders. They did not listen to the Star Alliance's orders at all and packed their resources and population. They hurriedly started to migrate and escape, preparing to escape the Star Alliance's territory and enter the unexplored universe. Originally, although most of the civilizations were angry and panicked, they had not made up their minds to abandon their homes. However, when they saw someone decisively running away, they immediately became anxious. Everyone else had already run away. If they did not follow, wouldn't they be staying behind to help others? How could this be? A chain reaction happened very quickly. One Star Alliance member after another did not dare to delay and started to migrate and escape, no longer caring about the Star Alliance's agreement. When these member states did not listen to the orders, the Star Alliance's mechanism was quickly paralyzed. The huge Star Alliance seemed to have broken up overnight, and the fleets of the various civilizations started to flee and part ways. In the past, many Star Alliance members would not easily disobey the Star Alliance's orders, or they would be isolated by others. However, they did not care so much now. The World Tree was attacking, and the Star Alliance had different opinions. This allied universal civilization was destined to fall apart. Everyone did not plan to wait for death. They only wanted to die instead of dying. This was Han Zhao's deliberate plan. The weakness of the Star Alliance's organizational structure was too obvious. There were too many interests, and they did not have a leading civilization that had the absolute advantage. They barely managed to gather, and their opinions could not be completely unified. Usually, the members of the Star Alliance had their misgivings, but once an existential crisis broke out, it would definitely be difficult for them to unite. There was an 80% chance that they would split up. As long as this collective will was broken up, the Star Alliance would be like a small giant being dismembered. Its resistance would plummet by several levels, and it would basically lose most of its fighting spirit. Back then, the Star Alliance had secretly leaked information to cause internal conflicts in the galactic society. Han Zhao's action was also to give them a taste of their own medicine. He used a method of dividing and dissolving, causing internal conflicts in the other party. The spaceport on the Lore civilization's mother planet was already packed with people. Anti-gravity transport vehicles transported batches of resources onto the fleet, and countless panic-stricken people lined up to board the ships under the orders of the armed soldiers. No matter how anxious they were, they could only suppress their emotions and obediently listen to the orders. Not long ago, a group of people wanted to start a riot, but they were directly suppressed by iron and blood and executed on the spot. The blood had not even dried, so no one dared to act rashly. Not long after, the first fleet was finally full. Without waiting for the rest of the spaceships, they directly took off and fled into the depths of the starry sky. Savines was already waiting in the main ship. As the leader of the civilization, he did not dare stay on the mother planet any longer. The escape fleet was divided into several batches. In order to escort him, more than half of the armed forces followed the first escape fleet with the fewest people. "We've finally set off," Savines heaved a sigh of relief. He still remembered that in the battle report, the two dynasty rulers had been tortured to death by the World Tree. It could be seen that the World Tree civilization liked to carry out beheadings. He was worried that he would follow in their footsteps and be trampled to death. Therefore, he only wanted to run away as soon as possible and did not dare stay on the mother planet to be a target. As far as he knew, the leaders of the other civilizations had the same idea and had all fled their mother planet. As the spaceship slowly accelerated, Savigny's finally wasn't as worried as before. He muttered to himself, "That's right," he muttered to himself. "It should be safe for the time being." However, before he could finish his sentence, the spaceship's radar suddenly emitted an ear-piercing buzzing sound, pointing straight ahead of the spaceship. An energy reaction appeared out of thin air, blocking their path. The next moment, a mechanical deity expanded in the wind, and its size instantly exceeded the size of the entire fleet. It covered the stars and the sun, and a huge hand suddenly covered them. Rumble, psionic energy rippled like water, and the entire fleet began to explode like firecrackers. In the blink of an eye, the armed fleet was almost completely wiped out. They could not even cause a ripple, turning into a large expanse of fireworks in the starry sky. It was very beautiful. "This is Black Star." Savines was shocked. He hurriedly turned around and shouted, "Run, run." However, before he could finish, the spaceship operators were already sweating profusely. "This won't do. The fleet's intelligence matrix is completely locked. We can't control it at all. The spaceship is already paralyzed." "No." Savine's eyes widened in extreme fear. His pupils reflected the enlarged palm of the supreme heavenly venerate, and the mechanical patterns in his palm became clearer and clearer. Crack! Han Shao grabbed the main ship and sucked it into his body, capturing Savines and the upper echelons on the ship. Then, he suddenly raised his hand and hammered. Energy burst out like a gamma-ray burst, spreading out in a large area, instantly evaporating a large group of battleships that were planning to counterattack. First one, Han Shao turned around and disappeared in a flash, as if he had never been there. His goal was to capture the leaders of all the civilizations in the Star Alliance and use the advantage of individual strength to capture the leader first. With his current combat strength, the success rate of the decapitation operation was almost 100% against a civilization at the level of the Star Alliance. No one could stop him. His Excellency Savines has been captured by the enemy. Because Han Zhao's decapitation efficiency was too fast, when Savines and the other upper echelons were captured, the remaining defense forces of the mother planet did not have time to provide support. The remaining personnel of the ground base stared blankly at the place where Han Shao had disappeared. Listening to the busy tone in the command channel, they suddenly fell into a state of chaos. End of chapter. Chapter 1477. The Star Alliance also had individual strength, but compared to the three universal civilizations, their top combatants were too few and too weak. With Han Zhao's abilities, he could do whatever he wanted here. In addition, the virtual network of the entire Star Alliance area was under the surveillance of Han Shao, a transcendent grade mechanic. The whereabouts of the upper echelons of the various Star Alliance members could not be hidden at all. Han Shao was like an eagle pouncing on chicks, constantly teleporting and flashing, accurately intercepting the evacuation fleets of the upper echelons of the Star Alliance members one after another. He did not miss a single time, and even the leader of the Star Alliance did not manage to escape. He was also captured by him. In just a few days, the leaders and upper echelons of the 46 civilizations in the Star Alliance became Han Zhao's prisoners. One civilization after another lost the command from the upper echelons. Some civilizations had a good system and continued to carry out the migration plan through the command chain at the bottom. Some civilizations were rather decisive, and some took up the position of the upper echelons. However, most of them fell into different degrees of chaos. The intelligence of the world tree and the three universal civilizations was a secret of the upper echelons of the Star Alliance. The people and the officers knew nothing about it. They did not know what the World Tree fleet represented, nor did they have a strong fear of the World Tree civilization that the upper echelons of the Star Alliance had nurtured for many years. Therefore, after the upper echelons of the various civilizations disappeared, many civilizations launched an intense counterattack, as if they were newborn calves who were not afraid of tigers. However, due to the collective absence of the upper echelons, the internal secrets were leaked under the influence of a certain force, and it quickly spread among the Star Alliance's grassroots. Most people understood the source of the disaster and learned how terrifying the World Tree civilization was, as well as the current situation where the World Tree civilization was at war with the three universal civilizations. As for the operation of the upper echelons of the Star Alliance, taking advantage of the situation under Han Zhao's control, it was not announced. It was still a secret. Because the World Tree's mechanism was too terrifying, the morale of many civilizations was reduced by more than half. What completely destroyed the will of the various civilizations in the Star Alliance was the invasion of another armed force. This time, the army that landed in the Star Alliance was the army of the three universal civilizations that was supposed to be fighting the World Tree. They had also become attackers. The morale of the Star Alliance completely collapsed. Faced with the pincer attack of two universal civilizations, they no longer had the courage to resist and could only flee in panic. The entire Star Alliance's battle situation slid into the abyss at lightning speed. All the resistance forces were paralyzed and destroyed by the three universal civilizations and the World Tree. Countless spaceships fled the Star Alliance's territory in a hurry, and it was already a mess. Only a month had passed since the World Tree civilization and the three universal civilizations invaded the Star Alliance. In reality, if the Star Alliance could unify all of its powers, they would at least have a universe-level standard. They wouldn't be so useless, and they would still be able to resist for a period of time if they worked together. However, it happened too suddenly, and there were too many internal differences, making it impossible for them to form an effective counterattack. The current situation of the Star Alliance was like the three universal civilizations that had been ambushed by the World Tree in his previous life. Furthermore, the situation was even worse, and they were caught off guard. If the Star Alliance was given some time, they might be able to recover from the chaos after suffering heavy losses and form various scattered civilian resistance forces. However, there was no chance now. All the upper echelons of the Star Alliance civilizations that were captured by Han Xiao were not executed, nor were they immediately devoured and transformed by the World Tree. Instead, they were all locked in the same cage and were not tortured physically. However, there were virtual screens floating in the cage, broadcasting the tragic situation of their various civilizations under the attack of the World Tree all day long, making it impossible for all the upper echelons of the Star Alliance to rest peacefully. They endured the psychological torture, and everyone was extremely haggard. Every day, as they watched the World Tree fleet destroy the Star Alliance, everyone was shocked, angry, and filled with fear and despair. They were in a state of panic. After the three universal civilizations attacked the Star Alliance on the screen, all the imprisoned upper echelons of the Star Alliance were stunned, and their minds went blank. They had thought that the World Tree was fighting on two fronts, but they did not expect the three universal civilizations to attack them as well. In an instant, their previous guesses were overturned, and everyone was shocked. Why would the three universal civilizations invade our territory with the World Tree civilization? Aren't they still fighting? The haggard Star Alliance leader's voice was hoarse with unconcealable shock and confusion. Did they give up and make peace? No, how is that possible? They shouldn't have given up until they die. Isn't the World Tree unable to coexist with any civilization? Someone muttered in disbelief. Savines opened his bloodshot blue eyes and hissed. There's only one possibility, and that is that the three universal civilizations have already been devoured and transformed by the world tree, becoming its slaves and losing their freedom. In other words, their civilization has already been destroyed. Ah, woo. As he spoke, Savines revealed an ugly expression. It was as if he was crying and laughing at the same time, with an inexplicable ruthlessness and joy. Among all the Star Alliance civilizations that were attacked, the Lore civilization was the most miserable. They were targeted by the World Tree and the three universal civilizations. Savines watched the tragic scenes his race experienced every day, and his mental state was on the verge of collapse. In his eyes, although he was about to face destruction, at least the three universal civilizations were gone. His revenge had succeeded, and he had already dragged his enemies down with him, destroying the prosperous world of the three universal civilizations. Hearing this, everyone nodded silently. They all agreed that the three universal civilizations had become the vassals of the World Tree civilization. However, unlike Savines, the other upper echelons of the Star Alliance did not feel any joy, only fear. Originally, a single World Tree civilization was enough to destroy the Star Alliance. Now, the other party had even absorbed the forces of the three universal civilizations, completing the reinforcement. It was equivalent to two universal civilizations attacking from both sides. No matter how they thought about it, they felt that the Star Alliance had no chance of surviving. Their hearts were filled with despair, and their expressions were numb. Swoosh! At this moment, the door of the cage opened, and everyone turned around. A figure walked in against the light of the corridor outside, revealing an expressionless face. It was Han Xiao. "Everyone, have you been living comfortably?" Han Xiao spoke with an emotionless tone. Black Star. Everyone subconsciously shrank back as fear appeared on their faces. Only Savines did not retreat. Instead, he took a few steps forward nervously with a ferocious smile on his face. He stretched out his hands as if he wanted to grab Han Xiao's shoulders. Pa! Before he could take a few steps, an invisible force swept out and sent Savines flying. His body was stuck to the wall of the prison with a bang. However, Savines did not seem to feel any pain at all. Instead, he laughed crazily as if he was about to stop breathing. "Ha ha, Black Star. Your three universal civilizations have also suffered a crushing defeat and become slaves of the World Tree. We will also become members of the World Tree. We are just equal existences to you. We will all end up the same. Don't think that anyone has won." Ha Kafa! The upper echelons of the Star Alliance looked at the crazed Savines and remained silent. There was only dejection on their faces, and there was even pity in their eyes when they looked at Han Xiao. Although they were destined to become members of the World Tree and did not seem to be dead, losing themselves was no different from death in their eyes. Seeing this, Han Xiao knew what they were thinking. He did not mind and shook his head. "Do you think the three universal civilizations have become slaves of the World Tree?" A reasonable deduction, an interesting guess. Unfortunately, it's a completely wrong conclusion. Without waiting for anyone to react, he raised his palm, and a pocket-sized shadow of the Tree of World immediately appeared in his palm. It spun and emitted an astonishingly high-level pressure, so intimidating that everyone present felt weak all over and couldn't stand. One by one, they collapsed to the ground. "Our war has already ended, but you guessed wrong. The World Tree has been captured by me and has now become my universal treasure. In other words, I am a master of the World Tree civilization." As soon as he finished speaking, Savines' crazy and hoarse laughter stopped abruptly, like a screaming chicken that had its throat pinched. He widened his eyes and stared at Han Xiao. "Impossible. I don't believe it. The intelligence clearly said that the World Tree civilization had the upper hand and almost destroyed." "Oh? You're talking about the intelligence sent back by the group of monitors you left in the desolate universe belt?" Without waiting for Savines to finish, Han Xiao interrupted him and smiled playfully. "I got someone to make up those battle reports. Are you happy enough?" As soon as he said that, it was as if he had pressed the mute button. Savines' anger froze on his face, and the others widened their eyes. The room suddenly fell silent. Han Shao blinked and slowly said, "Your spies have long been discovered by us and transformed into servants of the World Tree. They have been sending you fake information, making you think that we are still in the middle of a war. In fact, we have already taken care of the World Tree more than a year ago. What you see is an illusion that we deliberately made up." At this moment, everyone's expressions were extremely interesting. Thinking of the pleasant surprise they had received every time they saw the battle report over the past year, everyone felt as uncomfortable as if they had eaten something delicious. It turned out that they had been foolishly laughing at the fake information that others had made up. They had been complacent and smug about it, and they had been toyed with by others. At this moment, everyone wished they could tear off their faces and throw them somewhere they could no longer see. At the same time, an even deeper sense of despair rose in everyone's hearts. After knowing that this was a mixed double battle, everyone completely lost all hope. Their faces were extremely gloomy, and they knew that the Star Alliance was finished. Seeing this, Han Shao shook his head. Actually, he felt that the Star Alliance was quite unlucky. Even if these people did not take advantage of the situation to stab the 3 universal civilizations in the back, when he defeated the World Tree, he would still use the Information Form Warning Network to cover all the star fields in his territory. This way, the Star Alliance would still have nowhere to hide and would still be exposed. At that time, the Star Alliance would still be watched and vigilant by the 3 universal civilizations, and their outcome would not be any better. Therefore, the moment the Star Alliance sent spies to investigate the Galactic Society, their outcome was almost destined. The leader of the Star Alliance clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. "What do you want to do to us if you don't devour us?" Han Shao glanced at them and said, "I need everyone's cooperation. As you can see, we have the ability to destroy all the civilizations in the Star Alliance, but I will give your race a chance. Stop resisting, choose to submit, and become our subsidiary. Only then will we give you the right to continue. You can completely devour us. Why are you doing this?" The leader of the Star Alliance was furious. "I like it." Han Shao raised his brows. He paused for a moment, glanced at everyone, and continued, "Think about it. You only have one chance." At this moment, Savine suddenly roared and interrupted him. "We will never give up our freedom and become the World Tree's vassals. Don't even think about enslaving us." However, before he could finish, Han Shao flicked his finger and mechanical particles flew out, forming a mechanical closure device that covered the lower half of Savine's face, blocking his roar back into his chest. Han Shao retracted his gaze and said with a calm expression, "It seems like he has already made his choice. Before the Lore civilization is destroyed, he will not be executed. He will be here to see the results of his choice. Everyone, it's your turn. Because I was interrupted just now, I'll repeat myself. The 3 universal civilizations can destroy you effortlessly. If you refuse me, you won't even have the chance to reproduce under the World Tree's jurisdiction. Destroy or continue, think carefully." Everyone's expressions were uncertain as they fell into an endless dilemma. They knew that this was an example to others, but this move was still very effective. They wanted to say that they would never become slaves, but looking at the miserable state of their race on the virtual screen, they felt the burden on their shoulders become heavier and heavier, making them unable to open their mouths. At this moment, mechanical particles flowed out from under Han Zhao's robe and turned into a fixed cabin, locking Savine's up and making him unable to move. This attracted everyone's sympathetic gazes. "Don't worry, you have plenty of time. Before our fleet destroys your civilization, you can hesitate as much as you want. After all, the ones dying in battle are not you." Han Shao said this and left under everyone's terrified and unwilling gazes. The cell door closed behind him, cutting off Savine's struggling groans. Han Shao did not stop walking, and the officers of the 3 universal civilizations were already waiting at the door. Seeing this, they quickly followed. "Your Excellency Black Star, thank you for your hard work," Tenny said. "It's nothing. I'll leave the rest to you guys." Han Shao waved his hands. He had already helped to this extent, and the Star Alliance had already lost the ability to resist. The rest of the work was enough to leave to the three universal civilizations. With the World Tree civilization working together, he did not need to do anything else. The three universal civilizations were still capable of completing such a simple task. I didn't expect it to be resolved so smoothly. A civilization that has stepped into the threshold of a universe level was easily disintegrated in such a short time. My organization has actually expanded to this level. Han Xiaoxin sighed inwardly before striding away. Chapter 1478. After dealing with the upper echelons of the Star Alliance, Han Xiao became the boss. The three universal civilizations and the World Tree civilization were in charge of the subsequent cleanup and recruitment operations. Because the Star Alliance's resistance had basically collapsed, this was a time-consuming and effortless task for the three universal civilizations. They methodically cleaned up the civilization migration troops in the Star Alliance. Originally, the Rare War mission was a large-scale event that the players were passionate about, but this time, the three universal civilizations did not issue a large-scale summoning order. Only a small number of players were summoned to deal with the Star Alliance, and more players focused on their own pro league. After a long period of preparation, the qualifiers had already begun, and it was now at the climax. Therefore, most of the players were not interested in the Star Alliance war. They only wanted to hurt each other and participate in the new pro league. Because Han Xiao had been farming the Sanctum Authority and working for the truth of the universe's iteration, he did not pay attention to the situation of the players' pro league. Now that he had the time to take a look, he realized that the biggest special feature of this pro league was that the combat level had increased significantly. The mainstream competition level had already increased from grade B to calamity grade, and their destructive power had increased greatly. It was now version 5. Compared to version 4.0, the level cap had increased from level 150 to level 200. The series of missions of the World Tree War had made the players earn a lot. Although they had watched a wave of cinematics during the final battle, the victory settlement had brought the players a shocking amount of benefits. During the fourth season of the Pro League, the mainstream players were basically grade B. Although they were considered the backbone of the universe, in the eyes of the top combatants, they were still noobs. In the fifth season of the Pro League, the gap between the players was even greater. Now, the main players of the Pro League had to be at the calamity grade, and their battles were very good. In the Super's Holy Land, on an uninhabited planet, in arena number 24 of the qualifiers, the battleships of the player guilds floated in midair and watched the battle on the ground. They saw two yellow dragons entangling and colliding with each other. From time to time, shockwaves would burst out, causing spiderweb-like cracks to appear on the ground within a few kilometers. Two players in heavy armor were moving rapidly on the planet's surface, constantly exchanging blows with each other. They were like walking natural disasters, but their IDs were unfamiliar. They were not professional players from any guild, just ordinary players participating in the competition. These were just two unknown players, but their destructive power was already very outstanding. Many of the players in the sky couldn't take their eyes off them. Because the players had stepped into the calamity grade in batches, their strength had increased collectively, and many people's combat power had undergone a qualitative change. In order to ensure viewership ratings and prevent the professional players of some large guilds from really failing in the qualifiers, many large clubs had obtained a direct pass to the official league, not needing to take the risk in the qualifiers. Although this made the preliminaries less exciting, the players were still very excited because there were so many dark horses. The overall destructive power of the players is getting stronger and stronger. In outer space, Han Zhao's virtual projection overlooked the planet, taking in the scene of the players' battle. He was in stealth mode, so the other players couldn't see his projection. They were still focused on the match and didn't look up at the sky. Let the players grow a few more versions, and a level cap will be unlocked more and more. They will definitely become the new source of chaos. Han Zhao's eyes moved slightly as he muttered to himself. Now that the Galactic Society had formed a new stable structure, it would basically maintain overall peace for a long time. This was a good thing for the galactic residents, but it was a bad thing for the players. After experiencing the events of several versions, the players had already eaten big fish and meat and seen big scenes. It would definitely be unbearable for them to go back and do the daily side quests. If there were no new disasters or big events, the players who were unwilling to be left out would definitely become big events. As their strength increased, they would definitely become more restless and wouldn't be satisfied with being leisurely, resulting in chaos. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind. Han Shao looked deeply at the players' spaceships in the sky, turned around, and disappeared. On the other side, in the cabins of the players' spaceships, countless people were staring at the feedback of the ground competition from the satellite screen. The officers of the various guilds and clubs were also paying attention to the situation of the qualifiers, recording the dark horses and discussing softly. This year's competition is really top-notch. There are too many strong people. I don't think it's good. I've already seen more than 30 top-notch passers-by. If our team's players are really defeated by passers-by, it will be a huge loss of face. I really hope that the next version will come soon and open up a higher level. The guild plan can also be implemented. Many guild officers were secretly excited. As the level cap was unlocked further, the scale of the calamity grade players of the various guilds welcomed a wave of increase. They became an organization, and the operational strength of the guild organizations also increased. Now, many guilds had a large number of calamity grade players, and their strength was enough to occupy a place in the Galactic Society. In order to continue widening the gap between their professional players and ordinary players, many professional guilds had privately formulated detailed guild operations plans for the next version, deciding to expand in the universe in the next version. Although they were watching the Pro League, the thoughts of many guild officers had already drifted away. They could not wait to do something big in the next version. Han Shao did not have the time to pay attention to the Players' Pro League. To him, this was only to adjust his mood. He buried himself in the machinery factory and almost abandoned all his chores, repeatedly checking the feasibility of the World Tree's information materialization function to break through the dark side universe. The days flew by during the research, and the three universal civilizations' cleansing of the Star Alliance gradually came to an end. They had already received the battle report made by Han Shao from the upper echelons of the Star Alliance. They were speechless at Han Zhao's bad taste and felt that this person was King ridiculous. However, the leaders of the three universal civilizations could not disturb Han Shao, who was studying the plan to break the seal of the dark side universe because of such a small matter. They could only pretend that nothing had happened and silently order people to destroy this dark history. In the blink of an eye, more than a year had passed. The three universal civilizations had more or less completed the dismantling and cleansing of the Star Alliance. They had digested most of the spoils of war and dismembered this enemy who was hiding in their beds. The players' Fifth Pro League also came to an end during this period. This time, the Dynasty Club finally returned to first place and won the championship of the Fifth Pro League. Second Prince inherited King Admiral's position and led the team to win the championship. He instantly raised his position in history by a level and was hailed as the cornerstone of the next dynasty by the club. Dynasty was the only team to have won the championship twice in the 5 pro leagues. Their popularity, which had been declining slightly, soared like a rocket. The former Dynasty champion captain, King Admiral, who was the coach of the team, publicly congratulated Second Prince and expressed his gratification. Port Bun called it the passing of the baton to the king, which was accepted by the players and spread widely on the forums. The second and third place of this year's competition were America's Devil Team and Russia's White Vodka Team. Although the Huaxia team was not as dominant as before and was unable to occupy 2 of the top 3 spots, their performance was still not bad. They had obtained excellent results in the individual competition, group competition, and other subsidiary competitions, and their presence was very strong. With the end of the Pro League, version 5, 5 also came to the end, and it was time for the version update. In the player guild bases on the various planets of the Super's Holy Land, groups of players gathered there and waited to go offline. They chatted casually, and it was as noisy as a market. It's finally going to be updated again. I wonder how many years later it will be this time. The next version should be a major update. The level cap will be unlocked at least 20. Let's go. I wonder what will happen in the next version. Even a great enemy like the World Tree has been dealt with. I don't think anything can shake the current structure of the Galactic Society. Didn't you see the deduction of the galaxy times? There's a high chance that the internal conflicts will intensify. Black Star might turn evil and become a new boss, competing with the 3 universal civilizations for hegemony. Yo, does that mean we can finally start a massacre? Then I'm going to kill him until the world turns upside down. That's great. I've been unhappy with those 3 Olby asterisk stars for a long time. When the time comes, let me chop them up to vent my anger. You guys are so disappointing. Compared to this, shouldn't we be more concerned about whether the bug of not being able to go naked can be fixed in the next version? Yes. If we still can't go naked in the next version, I'll definitely complain. Hearing the players around her shouting, Maple Moon had a look of disdain. She felt that these people were hopeless. As they chatted, it was time to go offline. A large white light flashed, and groups of players disappeared one after another. The hall became empty. At the same time, in the private research room of the Super's Holy Land, Han Xiao, who was researching, paused and raised his head. Has the version update started again? Han Xiao stopped his work and opened the interface to take a look. The forum was closed again. This meant that the time flow of the dark side universe and the real universe was unbound again, becoming 2 independent systems again. He was the only one left with the stable information interference bridge. During this period of time, he had repeatedly studied the feasibility of the transformation plan. Now, he was more than 70% confident. Although he had contributed to it, it was more due to the testing and perfection of the previous dark side iterations. He was also standing on the shoulders of giants and making the final repairs to this plan. Han Xiao shook his head and closed the interface. Just as he was about to return to his research, Philip suddenly appeared. Master Hum, Her Excellency Ames has come to your office. She wants to see you, Hum. Oh, I got it. I'll go over now. Han Xiao rubbed the space between his brows. He had no choice but to put down the research in his hands and turn around to go to the office. As soon as he entered, he saw Ames sitting in her seat with her back to the door. Hearing the sound, Ames turned her chair around. A pair of long legs stretched out from under the high slit of her black skirt. She sat with her legs crossed and stared at Han Xiao with a faint smile. It's not easy to see a busy person like you. I've been very busy recently. You know that. Han Xiao walked around the table and came to the back of the chair. He pressed his hands on both sides of Ames's forehead and gently rubbed it. Ames closed her eyes comfortably, but her mouth didn't stop. She chuckled and said, Yes, there's no time when you're not busy. If I didn't come to look for you occasionally, I would almost suspect that you had forgotten about me. What are you talking about? You're talking nonsense. You should be punished. Han Xiao curled his lips, and a weak electric current appeared on his finger, causing Ames's eyelashes to tremble. Ames tilted her head and dodged Han Xiao's finger. She slapped his hand away, turned around, and stood up. She put away her smile and said seriously, I don't understand. The World Tree has been dealt with, and the 3 universal civilizations have admitted defeat. We don't have any safety concerns now. Why are you still making yourself so busy? Where are you getting the pressure from? This is a secret. I can't tell you yet. In short, it's very troublesome. Han Xiao shook his head. It was useless to tell the beyond grade as about the secrets of the universe's iterations, so he did not reveal it to anyone other than the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations. Do you still remember what I said back then? Ambition is endless. When are you willing to stop? Do you really want to replace the 3 universal civilizations? Ames frowned. What exactly is it that you have to hide it so tightly? Can't you tell us and bear the burden together? You can't help. Han Xiao hesitated for a moment, raised his hand, and touched Ames' cheek. Feeling the smooth texture, he softly said, Yes. This should be the last time. I'll let us all survive. Hearing this, Ames's eyes changed. Although she did not know what Han Xiao was hiding, she could hear the seriousness in Han Zhao's tone. Even a transcendent would find it troublesome, so it must be some kind of unimaginable predicament. Ames was about to chase after him when the communicator in the room suddenly rang. It was a message from Mara Bruce, and there was only one content. The Sanctum Exploration Team was finally back. Han Zhao's eyes lit up. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. I'll accompany you next time. Han Xiao hurriedly changed into the king. Ames opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but the next moment, Han Xiao activated the teleportation and disappeared from the room in the blink of an eye. Looking at the empty room, Ames clenched and unclenched her fists. She repeated this a few times before taking a deep breath and suppressing the complicated emotions in her heart. The subordinate who had once needed her protection was now an existence she could only look up to. Until today, she felt that it was more and more difficult for her to keep up with Han Zhao's footsteps. Although Ames had a calm personality and rarely bothered about such things, after so many years, she would still care and feel disappointed. Even though Han Zhao's attitude toward her had always been the same, Ames knew that it was very difficult for her to share Han Zhao's worries. Chapter 1479. In a certain military forbidden area in the central galaxy, the location where the Sanctums had been summoned had been tightly sealed. There were dense space-armed fortresses and huge fleet armies scattered around, and the defense was tight. Suddenly, a ray of light lit up in the darkness, slowly spinning and expanding, turning into 3 sanctum passageways that led to a white world. They floated quietly in space like 3 miniature white holes. In the dazzling light door, 3 black shadows gradually grew larger and slowly drove out. They were the spaceships of the 3 universal civilizations that had gone to explore the Sanctums. A group of soldiers immediately flew out of the military base and led the 3 spaceships back to the fortress. The members of the spaceships walked out under the guidance of their companions. Most of them looked dazed, as if their minds were in a daze. Their eyes were dull, and their reactions were slow. Only Claudia, Ulu, and the Beyond Grade as of the Arcane Church looked better, but there was still shock on their faces. At this moment, a glimmer flashed, and the remote projections of the 3 universal civilizations' rulers descended. They immediately surrounded them with nervous expressions. How's the situation? Did you get the information in the Sanctums? Claudia's eyes focused, and he was stunned for a few seconds before he seemed to react. With a serious expression, he nodded solemnly. The scene in the Sanctums is exactly the same as what Blackstar said. We've already seen the records on the Sanctums message board. It's indeed the truth of the universe's iterations. In addition, we've also obtained some information about the past iterations from the Sanctums. Although it's not much, it's still proof. Hearing this, the 3 universal civilizations' rulers took a deep breath. Although they felt that Han Xiao was not lying, they were still shocked when this was confirmed. This time, Lewis suddenly lowered his voice and said, "Did the Sanctum Revival experiment succeed?" "It did." Claudia raised his palm and showed the Sanctum Revival mark on the back of his hand. It was exactly the same as in the records. Only then did the 3 of them completely relax and nod silently. In order to prove the authenticity of the Sanctums and prevent being tricked by Blackstar again, the 3 universal civilizations had deliberately taken out a few mediums of their deceased direct descendants and handed them to Claudia and the others to test if the Sanctum Revival was feasible. If they failed, it would mean that there was something fishy about the Sanctum they had entered. Perhaps it was an alternate space deliberately built by Blackstar just to fool them. If they succeeded, they would be able to prove that it was the real Sanctum. Back then, when they asked Blackstar to help revive the direct Beyond Grade, although the 3 universal civilizations rulers said that they would take out the media of all the deceased direct Beyond Grade, they actually kept a small portion of the deceased direct Beyond Grade, claiming that they did not have the media of these people. This was to guard against Black Star and prevent accidents. Even when Black Star proved that the Sanctum Revival was reliable, the three universal civilizations did not reveal this. They planned to use it as a test material when they researched the Sanctums in the future. Now it came in handy. Tap, tap, tap. At this moment, footsteps suddenly sounded from afar. Han Xiao, who had teleported over, strode over. Without waiting for anyone to speak, he grabbed Claudi's hand and raised it in front of his eyes. "What are you doing?" Claudi was shocked and subconsciously wanted to break free, but he realized that he could not move Han Xiao's 5 fingers at all. The three universal civilizations' rulers thought that Han Xiao was concerned about the Sanctum Revival imprint, and their hearts tightened. They were worried that Black Star would hold a grudge against them for trying to revive the Sanctum in private. However, they were wrong. At this point, Han Xiao would not pay attention to these details. He revealed his Sanctum Authority imprint, and Claudi's palm immediately responded, revealing his Sanctum Authority imprint. One of the two imprints was complicated and exquisite, while the other was simple and crude. This was the difference between full authority and level 1 authority. Seeing this, Han Xiao let go of Claudi and said, How does it feel to enter and leave his sanctum? Is it very hallucinatory?" Claudi rubbed his aching wrist and nodded hesitantly. "Indeed, I feel like I'm sleepwalking. Although I can still control my body, my perception seems to be separated by a layer. It's not like I can move as I wish under normal circumstances. It's more like I'm controlling my body from a third person's perspective. My brain and body are no longer one. It's your first time in, so it's normal to feel this way, although I've never experienced the feeling of having a low authority." Han Xiao patted him on the shoulder. "Your authority is too low, so you spent a lot of time. We've been waiting for you in the main universe for a long time." Hearing this, Claudi and the others looked at the time and were shocked. It had been a year or two since they set off, and they had only stayed in the sanctum for a few hours. Get used to it. When your authority is high, the flow of time in the sanctum will slowly converge with the main universe. Han Xiao explained casually before turning to look at the leaders of the three universal civilizations. "How is it? You guys got the information you wanted, right? Do you believe what I said now?" Bruce nodded calmly. "We've confirmed the truth about the universe's iterations. It's exactly as you said." This time, the ethereal Pope pondered and said, "It's just that our authority is too low and we can't see all the information on the Sanctum's message board. Therefore, we still can't verify the secrets of the ultimate three universal civilizations and the dark side universe that you mentioned." Hearing this, Han Zhao's eyes widened and he found it funny. "What? You guys don't want me to help you farm the Sanctum's authority until you unlock all the information on the Sanctum's message board, do you? If you don't mind, of course, we'd be honored. Get lost." "Ahem. We can understand if you're not willing." The three of them looked embarrassed. "It's true that I can help you complete the great deeds of several iterations, but don't push your luck." Han Xiao stood with his arms crossed and frowned. "I've already done enough for the Galactic Society. I've done my best, and I've already shown enough sincerity, but you guys are still skeptical of me. It was like this when we dealt with the World Tree, and it's still the same now. To be honest, if you guys still doubt me, then let's just go our separate ways." No. We just need to think about it, because this is a big matter. We don't doubt you. Let's go to the office and have a chat." The three of them quickly surrounded him and explained. They led the way and brought Han Xiao to a private conference room. After closing the door and confirming that there were no outsiders present, Bruce coughed and said, "Trust me, we believe in the intelligence of the dark side universe. Now that we've verified that the Sanctum's intelligence is true, let's talk about the topic we didn't finish last time. How do you plan to break the seal of the dark side universe and let us return to the real universe?" "2 ways." Han Xiao raised 2 fingers. "Were they?" The three of them perked up and listened carefully. Han Xiao paused for a moment before explaining slowly. "The first is to follow the route of the 3 universal civilizations in the previous 2 dark side iterations and use the information materialization device normally. Although the World Tree has undergone information mutation and changed its nature, and it has a lot of fancy functions, its essence has not changed. It still has the core function of the information materialization device, and I've already dug it out. What about the second one? The second one is to use the information materialization device, but it has to be combined with my virtual creation ability. The three of them looked at each other in confusion. Bruce said with a doubtful tone, "Aren't these two using the information materialization device? What's the difference?" "The difference is my positioning." In the first plan, the success rate of the plan depends entirely on whether the information interference bridge meets the prerequisite requirements of the transformation, which means that this established route might still fail. As for the second plan, I can use my own ability. The principle is, I won't talk about the principle. You guys won't understand anyway. In short, I think it can increase the success rate of the transformation. The only concern is that the previous two dark side iterations have never tried my new method, so there might be some uncertainties. Han Xiao shook his head. The first plan was only to use him as a tool, a medium to activate the information materialization device. In the second plan, he was the executor of the plan. The difference between the two was who was the leader. After fusing with the world tree, Han Xiao studied it carefully and finally transformed his virtual creation skill. He removed the fake suffix, and the effect of the skill had a huge change. It was similar to the core function of the information materialization device and could resonate with it. The three of them hesitated and discussed softly. Han Xiao did not rush them. After a few minutes, Bruce raised his head and asked, "What's the estimated success rate of these two plans?" Han Xiao spread his hands. The first plan has a 50% success rate. The second plan, I estimate, has a 70% success rate, but the risks are unknown. Lewis pondered and said, "Why don't we try the first plan first? If it doesn't work, we could try the second one." It can, but the stable interference bridge might be damaged in the failure. By then, the dark side iteration won't have a chance to regret it. Therefore, I personally suggest that it's best to do in one go. Han Xiao shrugged. "We need to think about it again." "All right, you guys have plenty of time. However, the things that you need to prepare for the two plans are about the same. During this time, mobilize the Galactic Society and prepare." Okay. The three of them nodded and disconnected the remote projection. They could not wait to go back and discuss. Han Xiao was the only one left in the conference room. He looked at the spot where the three of them had disappeared and curled his lips. In fact, he had hidden a third plan, which was to use the world tree to swallow the entire universe and compress and pack it in his body, forming a complete and independent information collection. This way, it could reduce the difficulty of the information materialization. In his opinion, the success rate of this plan could exceed 80%. However, even if he used his chest muscles to think, he knew that the three universal civilizations would never agree to this plan. They would even start to doubt his motive for helping. In addition, this process was too long. God knew how long it would take for the world tree to swallow the entire dark side universe. Just the journey alone would take countless years. Because of the changes that might happen if he delayed, he did not want to adopt this plan. Therefore, Han Xiao did not say anything and hid it in his heart. I hope the three universal civilizations choose the second plan. But even if they don't choose the second plan, I'll do it. Han Xiao smacked his lips. Letting the three universal civilizations choose was mainly to give them a feeling of participation. When the Galactic Society was ready to officially start the transformation, it would be up to him. Chapter 1480. Han Xiao teleported back to the office on the main planet of the Super's Holy Land. The meeting with the heads of the three universal civilizations was much faster than expected, but Ames did not wait there. She had already left, and the room was empty. Where did she go? Her Excellency Ames went to look for Aurora. Do you want me to inform her to come over? No need. I'll take the initiative to look for her later. Han Xiao casually asked and did not ask further. His expression was not as relaxed as when he was talking to the heads of the three universal civilizations. Instead, he had a lot on his mind. He told the heads of the three universal civilizations that he was worried that the stable interference bridge would be damaged during the transformation. This was not a lie, but a real worry. After this period of testing, he realized that, as a medium for the transformation, when he officially activated the information materialization device, he would suffer a large amount of information impact and temporarily establish a connection with the consciousness of the universe. During the reverse transformation to the true state, the interface, as a special product of the dark side universe, would gradually lose its effect. Therefore, the character summon card could not continue to function during the transformation process. If he wanted to maintain his consciousness and maintain the effect of virtual creation. True, he would have to strengthen his information foundation and add some information anchor points to prevent himself from being unable to hold on and causing the information interference channel to be disconnected. He did not reveal these details, and no one could help him. It would only add to his troubles. The so-called information anchor points should be my understanding of myself, my connection with the world tree, and my past memories, Han Xiao pondered. This was a rather mysterious perception. If he had not reached the transcendent grade, he would not have had such an intuition. Tracing back the past and remembering the past might be a way to deepen the information anchor points. The three universal civilizations are about to start preparing. I have to prepare too. Han Xiaoxin calmed down, changed into another set of king, and disappeared from the room again. Shattered star ring, blue star. The planet that had been abandoned for more than 10 years regained its prosperity after the people of Blue Star moved back. The old buildings that were covered by nature were demolished and rebuilt, and the entire planet was almost brand new. There was only one place that had not been renovated. The huge ruins had been covered by wild green vegetation, and the large number of building debris on the ground had rusted away. This was the ruins of the Germinal organization. It lay quietly on the wasteland, silent as always. Only the traces left behind by time seemed to tell the story of the past. The three figures slowly walked around the ruins, stopping and observing from time to time. Back then, your godfather and I fought side by side and destroyed the Germinal organization. He snuck in alone and stole a lot of confidential information. He even rescued the young Hela and Aurora. He fought for thousands of miles before he finally got the information. In the end, the war was decided and the Six Nations had nothing to worry about. They used a nuclear explosion to destroy the Germinal organization, and Blue Star was reborn that day. Bennett caressed the remains of a huge metal plate. He wiped away the rust on it with his palm, revealing a blurry Germinal organization imprint. His eyes could not help but reveal a complicated look of reminiscence, as if he was reminiscing about the era of war. Nero, who was standing behind him, took a few steps forward and placed his hand on the metal plate as well. I've seen these stories in textbooks, but every time I come to the ruins of the Germinal organization, I always feel like I'm there. It's as if I've experienced a battle that changed the fate of this planet. Bennett turned to look at him, shook his head, and laughed. Thinking about it, Black Star was like a completely different person compared to him now. Sigh, when people get old, they love to reminisce about the past. You're not old yet, Mia, who was carrying a child, said with a smile. Bennett laughed heartily. He walked in front of Mia and bent down to look at the baby in Mia's arms. The baby was looking at him curiously with his big eyes. He chuckled and stretched out his two short hands. Yo, my good grandson, let Grandpa carry you. Bennett's face was full of kindness, and his arms that could easily crush steel carefully received his grandson. He held him in his arms and shook him gently. Nero also came over with a face full of envy. Although he was the father of the child would cry nonstop whenever he hugged him. On the other hand, his son could only sleep peacefully in the arms of his grandfather, Bennett. After the war ended, Nero and Mia made a baby, which made Bennett very happy. Considering that Nero had become the acting army commander and that the Blue Star Federation was on the right track, Bennett thought about it and chose to step down from his position as the leader of the Blue Star Federation. Originally, many of the upper echelons did not agree and hoped that Bennett would be reelected. However, he had already made up his mind and was determined to step down. Now, he was no longer in charge of any position, and was retiring to enjoy the happiness of his family. Bennett played with the baby for a while before looking at Nero and asking, "Have you tested his super genes?" "Yes. The report says that his super genes are extremely active, and it's rare. He might be an extremely talented Esper in the future." Nero was overjoyed. "Is that so? That's not bad either." Bennett nodded and stroked the baby's sparse hair. The three of them played with the baby and chatted happily as they slowly walked away. Suddenly, the space rippled, and Han Zhao's figure walked out. He stood on the spot and watched as Bennett and his grandchildren left happily. How beautiful! He then turned to look at the germinal organization ruins in front of him. Reminiscence appeared in his eyes as well. He had already walked a very long path, but when he looked back, his past on this planet seemed to be right in front of him, as if it was just yesterday. The memories that had been sealed away surged like a tide, and scenes flashed before his eyes one after another. The half a year of darkness he had spent in the germinal organization's base after transmigrating to this world, driving an off-road vehicle under the moonlight after escaping with much difficulty, leaving Star Dragon and transforming in a black phantom to walk alone in the wasteland, infiltrating the germinal organization to steal information and being hunted down for thousands of miles, turning the germinal organization headquarters into ashes in a dazzling nuclear explosion. Similarly, the figures of people flashed before his eyes one after another. The young Hela, who was determined to jump into the abyss but was eventually pulled back by him. The young Aurora, who was still optimistic despite being tortured. The young Bennett, who worked tirelessly to end the war. The germinal organization leader, who was at the end of the road but did not turn back. The tragedy of the subsequent mutation disaster also appeared before his eyes. The chaotic world, the crazy people, the endless beast hordes, the spaceships that fell from the sky, the blazing and fierce ship cannons. The source of everything was the Dark Star, and finally the Dark Star. Two full versions of the disaster. This place is really full of misfortune and misfortune. Han Xiao closed his eyes slightly as the version of the plot flowed through his mind. After a long time, he opened his eyes and felt that his mind was calm. There seemed to be some subtle changes in his body. Somehow, his information foundation seemed to have become stronger, and he seemed to have set the first information anchor point to connect to Blue Star. Blue Star. Han Xiao slowly rose into the sky, looked down at the germinal organization ruins, and then looked at the bustling city at the end of the horizon. He gently turned around and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1481. The dark and deep space of the universe was like a curtain decorated with stars and diamonds. A silver-white planet was quietly rotating in it. The surface of the planet was made of metal, and there were mechanical towers with distinct edges and corners. They were connected to each other through the air, forming matrix-like patterns. The neat layout revealed an exquisite mechanical beauty. This was the new main planet of Han Zhao's mechanical life civilization. It was located in the territory of the Super's Holy Land and was completely created by mechanical life. The planet was very large and had merged with the material of several planets. The former planet Apostle had also been decomposed and merged with this planet. Originally, Psionic Prime and the other mechanical oracles wanted to name this new main planet Black Star Planet to show their respect to Black Star, but Han Xiao firmly rejected it. In the end, Psionic Prime and the other oracles changed their minds and named this planet Saint Planet. On the bustling alloy road, mechanical life, forms of all sizes and shapes were bustling. Some people's feet made clanging sounds when they walked. Some people's tires rubbed against the ground. Some people's engine cylinders kept rumbling, and some people's exhaust pipes kept spewing out gas from time to time, forming a strange tune with a strong mechanical feeling. Han Xiao walked among the machines. His entire body was covered in a camouflage coating. From the outside, he looked like an ordinary mechanical life form. All the mechanical life forms that approached him could not detect his existence. This place is becoming more and more prosperous. Han Xiao was secretly relieved. After taking in the world tree, He no longer needed the mechanical civilization to produce mechanical soldiers all day long. Thus, he stopped the order to increase the number of soldiers and let the mechanical civilization reproduce and develop on its own. This was the first time he had carefully observed the changes in the mechanical civilization after the war. Han Xiao did not walk fast, as if he was taking a slow stroll. His eyes kept looking left and right, sizing up the machines on the street. Although mechanical life forms were produced in batches and many people should have the same model, there was almost no mechanical life form on the street that was exactly the same. Even mechanical life forms of the same model had added all kinds of personalized structures to themselves through self-modification and were even equipped with colorful paint. Some like guns, some like sharp blades, some like heavy armor, and some like to run naked. From the perspective of a normal life form, this was like the difference in clothes, hairstyles, makeup, and accessories. In the shops on the street, Han Xiao also saw all kinds of products. Most of them were modification shops and part shopping malls. There were all kinds of mechanical parts, and they were even painted in different colors. There was a huge flow of customers, and mechanical life forms were entering and leaving every moment, trying on clothes. In addition, he also saw a special snack bar. The chef robots inside cooked oil, lubricating maintenance gels, energy blocks, and other items. They put them in a big pot and stir them vigorously to make all kinds of strange food. Han Xiao took one and tasted it. It was so bad that it almost broke his defense. However, the other mechanical life forms that came to buy left satisfied and ate happily. In their eyes, this was a rare delicacy. There are also a few couples of mechanical life forms feeding each other. Han Xiao also saw a sensory stimulation shop. To mechanical life forms, it was an entertainment venue. There were devices connected inside, directly simulating all kinds of senses and emotions, bringing a strong sense of stimulation to the smart core. After paying a large sum of money, they could also directly upgrade their emotional module through the host computer of the shop. In the side alley, Han Xiao also saw a few small robots scribbling on the alloy wall. Seeing that someone was coming, they quickly dispersed, stepping on the electromagnetic wheels and flying away close to the wall like a group of rebellious street kids. The graffiti on the wall was extremely wild, filled with a large number of distorted bright colors. The outline could vaguely be seen to be the portrait of the supreme heavenly venerate. In the originally cold and strict mechanical group, there was a strong individuality. The culture of freedom was popular, and Han Xiao saw the smoke and fire in this group of mechanical life forms. The lives of mechanical life forms are quite similar, Han Xiao smiled. All this time, he had mainly treated the mechanical civilization as an arsenal and did not pay much attention to the changes in the mechanical civilization's life. It was not until he let the mechanical civilization reproduce freely that he faced the budding cultural trend. As an artisan, he could guide the direction of the mechanical civilization's culture, but he did not do so and let it take shape naturally. Only now did he feel that the mechanical civilization was a little civilized. As he walked, Han Xiao found that he had come to a huge mechanical square. In the middle of the square stood two statues, both of which were himself. One was him in his normal state, and the other was his mechanical body in the supreme heavenly venerate state. The mechanical life forms in the square flowed endlessly. No one deliberately worshipped the statues. At most, they would occasionally stop and look up for a while before walking away and continuing their lives. Their respect for Han Xiao was no longer formal, but placed in their hearts. Han Xiao came to the foot of the statue and stopped to look up. Suddenly, from the corner of his eyes, he saw a tall mechanical life form carrying a small mechanical body of a similar model walk past him. He turned his head and looked. This seemed to be a happy father and son. The father let the child ride on his neck and kept teasing him. Han Xiao watched this scene silently, and the scenes of the mechanical civilization following him for the past few decades appeared in his mind. Countless mechanical lives walked onto the battlefield under his orders and were used as cannon fodder. Countless unique sparks of consciousness that were born in the circuit of the chip disappeared in the cold universe with a broken mechanical body. Although he treated mechanical lives as tools, due to the restrictions of the underlying logic, they did not have any complaints. They silently buried their hobbies and interests, risking their lives to fight for him, and still respected him, the creator. I don't need you to risk your lives for me in the future. Enjoy your new life. Han Xiao shook his head gently. He would not cancel the underlying logic of the mechanical civilization respecting him, but he did not plan to order the mechanical civilization to fight anymore. He had already grasped the world tree and virtual creation true, so he did not need these mechanical lives to work for him. He took one last look at his statue, and the memories in his heart flowed. He felt that another information anchor point had been set up, so he turned around and disappeared into the lively fleet. In the Super's Holy Land, the new headquarters of the Black Star Corps, Han Xiao strolled around the base and concealed himself. No one noticed his existence. The huge base was very lively. Countless members of the Black Star Corps were working here. People came and went, and from time to time, people would brush past Han Xiao while chatting. He walked around slowly and came to the area where the upper echelons were active. He saw Haluz working at his desk, Sylvia, who was still working hard to break through to beyond grade, Aroshia, who was staring at the starry sky outside the window in a daze, Lagi, who was slacking, and Reynold, who had maintained the operations of the logistics department for decades. Looking at the Black Star Corps, Han Xiao was a little dazed. The difficult memories of when he first started his business surfaced. He remembered that he had just entered the galaxy and was still a country bumpkin from a surface civilization. He was poor, and the only thing he could rely on was the guns in his hands. These old companions had followed him to build his current foundation and grew to this point with a third-rate mercenary group. Everything seemed to have happened yesterday, and his memories were still clear. The scene of Haluz, Aroshia, Sylvia, and the others following him as mercenaries appeared in his mind. At that time, everyone was very young and fought with their lives on the line. Now that nearly 100 years had passed, everyone had become big shots in the galaxy and no longer needed to do it personally. They had already succeeded and had a different life. Thinking back, Han Xiao could not help but sigh. Including himself, everyone had more or less changed their appearance for back then. Perhaps they all missed their past selves even more. The beginning was always the freshest, and in the future, they would always hate each other. As their careers progressed, their views changed easily. It made him feel like if only life was like the first time we met. However, although he was emotional, he still preferred the spiral development of things, allowing the road ahead to continue extending and ushering in all kinds of changes. The memories of the rise and expansion of the Black Star Corps flashed in Han Xiao's mind. In a daze, he felt another information anchor point being formed. He nodded and disappeared. At the same time, Haluz, Sylvia, Lagi, and the others who were doing their own things suddenly had a thought. For some reason, Han Xiao's figure suddenly appeared in their minds and could not be erased. They subconsciously thought of the dusty memories of when they first fought with Han Xiao. They stopped what they were doing and remained silent. Their emotions were complicated. What's wrong with me? Why do I suddenly miss the Black Star of the past so much? End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.